Okay, welcome back everyone to the Transportation and Environment Committee. This is our first transportation-focused session since our last break. Today we're focusing on a briefing from MCDOT and State Highway Administration on their sidewalk programs and other projects that contain sidewalk construction, as well as a briefing from planning staff on their predictive safety analysis tool. Often, if I remember this right, we discussed holding this briefing, Vice President, during the budget sessions, and often our sidewalk issues come up during the budget cycle and we don't have adequate time to address them, so I'm really glad we're bringing this up now. Thanks to the Council Vice President for suggesting this session, and welcome to Councilmember Friedson, whose attendance is noted as an adjunct member of the committee. I'll turn it over to, if my colleagues have any opening remarks. If not, I'll turn it over to Dr. Orland.
Okay, thank you very much and good afternoon. Yes, this is the first item on the agenda is a review of the sidewalk programs. This is a subject that Councilmember Glass raised last spring, and we brought together the folks from County DOT who will talk about their program and how they prioritize projects, and they have some planned changes in how the program works, followed by a short presentation by Derek Gunn and Luis Gonzalez from State Highway Administration to talk about their program, building new sidewalks along state highways. Just a little bit of background, the main project in the CIP to fund sidewalks is the Sidewalk Program Minor Projects project, which mostly takes recommendations from citizens or from individual citizens or from neighborhoods, and they are prioritized. But unfortunately, even though there's a lot of money in the program, sidewalk construction isn't cheap, and only 28 of the 300-some requests, for example, in 2021 were actually fulfilled by the money that was in the CIP. There are a host of other projects in CIP, though, that build sidewalks. They're listed in the packet. First of all, those projects which fund both sidewalks and bikeways, and particularly bikeways, a lot of them are shared use paths, which are by definition sidewalks as well as bikeways. And they're listed here. And then finally, there's also a list of projects which are strictly shared use paths, and those which are road projects which have sidewalks associated with them. And I do have some comments about part of DOT's recommendations, or what they have in their presentation, but I'll save that for a little bit later. So with that, let me turn it over first, I guess, to Tim Couples, who's the Director of Transportation Engineering for DOT, to introduce DOT staff here on this. Thanks.
Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Welcome, or thank you for having us. So we're happy to be here to provide you guys with an overview of our sidewalk program, joined by Bob Gonzalez, who manages that within the Division of Transportation Engineering, Michael Paler. The two divisions cooperate a lot on sidewalk, and we thought to provide you guys with a holistic overview that we both be here. And also wanted to recognize Lori Main, who's in the back here. She is the planning specialist with the sidewalk program. Anytime we go into a community to bring sidewalks, there are going to be those folks who are for it or against it, but the one thing they're unanimous about is Lori does a great job of communicating with them, and everybody is thrilled with Lori's performance. So I want to acknowledge all the hard work that she does and Bob does on the sidewalk program. What we're going to provide you today, just give you a preview before I turn it over to Bob, is kind of a historic overview of the sidewalk program, where the main funding comes from and how it has historically operated. And then we're also going to preview for you, since Bob has come in to manage the sidewalk program about 18 months ago, he's been working really hard to develop a system to prioritize and streamline our intake process. And so we're going to give you a sneak peek of some improvements that are coming to our website that are going to provide greater ease for requesting sidewalks, greater transparency on the status of a request, and also automate some of the prioritization process. And we look forward to having an interesting discussion with you on the factors that we have penciled in as far as what those should be for priorities. I think that's some of what Glenn may be commenting on later as well. So that's kind of my introductory spiel. I'll turn it over to Bob and get the presentation going.
Good afternoon, Bob Gonzalez, the new chief of the Sidewalk program. Thank you for being here and listening. This is actually a very timely schedule because we are in the middle of changing almost every step of our process. So it's kind of exciting. I'm glad that our group is open to it, and it's also our senior management has shown support of our changes. So hopefully we have some positive reports for y'all. This is some of the funding where, Sidewalk program above is mainly the projects initiated by residents' requests for sidewalk installation. Program follows process of community involvement with a comment period and public hearing. In addition to the review of the area pedestrian master plans, comments and testimony are used to guide decisions but not constitute a vote. You can see the funding from 22 to 24 is about 3 to 4 million. That is our main CIP level of effort. However, the sidewalk program does provide extensive support to our other sections, traffic, even our design section, and even our planning section who does design and construction. But including in the strong efforts is the Safe Routes to School, and also the Vision Zero effort, which is probably a whole day's presentation tomorrow, so I'm not going to go through there. Next, please. What is the sidewalk program? It's very quick. Sidewalk program provides safer pedestrian access throughout Montgomery County in an expedient and cost-effective manner. It's established to construct minor sidewalk projects to fill missing gaps in existing sidewalk networks. We typically do not prepare design plans, but we do utilize state, federal, and county ADA standards. Sidewalks are typically installed within 9 to 12 months following the resident's receipt of the project proposal. These are that's our flow of our quick steps of the sidewalk project. We receive the requests. We do field investigations to see what's currently out in the field. Third step is we prioritize and analyze which of these projects should stand above the others. If it survives that phase, we bring it to a public hearing and hopefully get public support. Next step is the decision, and then hopefully it goes to construction. So currently, this is a snapshot of what we're using to receive sidewalk requests. Right now, you go online, the county site has a PDF. You are supposed to fill it out and either mail it in or scan it and send it in as an email to request. Once we receive that, we would manually type it into an access database, which is another thing that we're trying to shift from access. And communications and updates are typically via phone or email. So that's what's currently happening now. Next page, this is the new tool, which is about 90% complete. We're hoping to have it online, hopefully this, maybe in a month or two, maybe October. Here, a resident can get online, draw where they want the sidewalk. This is a GIS-based tool, so lat long and the metadata required for the drawing is inputted while they submit it. The text, the location, the reason why they want it, and even the ability to submit photos are going to be on this new tool. So this will streamline the request process from requester to our office. And there's actually the next, don't change it yet, but this will tie into the next tool, which is tied into our Field Maps app, where our inspectors will be using to communicate to the same database. So we're hoping this becomes live this winter. This is a snapshot of the web page. So instead of that one PDF page, this looks a lot better. When you go into the map, you could zoom in and zoom out, and then you can put your cursor on the specific project that you have submitted and also what others have submitted. Interesting thing about this tool, if you support other people's requests, you could even provide your support and says, yeah, I like this one too. So instead of having to resubmit a new request, it would be, we could kind of tally up folks asking for the same location. Next, please. Oh, and just before that, on the top right, you'll see there's a request for sidewalks, and also to the right of that is a request for ADA improvements that you want, typically ADA ramps. So it's going to be the same tool. It'll have multiple use. Priority analysis. So currently, we have an informal way of prioritizing our sidewalk requests, and they are typically based on pedestrian and vehicle accidents. We have schools and public transportation facilities, bus stops, and also other pedestrian generators such as churches, synagogues, and swimming pools. Next, please. The new tool, since it has a lat long, can reference the GIS layers that we bring into the map. And this screen is a presentation of some of these factors, and you could see from the top right that each one of these factors, we can apply a weight to it. So the racial equity emphasis area, it's not going to be 5. I think that's a little heavy on the scale, but this was to create the equation. So it would be schools, pedestrian generators, accidents, and then dependent on the vicinity of the sidewalk to these locations, it would have a higher weight if they were close. So for instance, if it was within an equity emphasis area, it would get 1 or 2 points. If it was a mile away, it may get half. So this is just getting the equation in place. Those numbers will be finalized as we use them and as we see how the numbers are calculated or finalized. Thank you. Field investigation. So once we get a request, our field inspectors do go out. And again, currently, it's interesting that I found out they were just taking paper and pencil and writing down the impacts. You know, there's a sidewalk here. Not sidewalk. There's a tree, mailbox, and they would write the location, and it was just in writing. And similar to my talents, I cannot even read my own writing. So for our office to receive those reports was kind of challenging. But the factors we will look at are the right-of-way. Is this project going to be so complicated that will it need engineering design? And also, does it fall within the program parameters, such as minor projects under 200,000, or some of the criteria that we typically look for. If they're asking for a 3-mile project, it's not going to be part of our program. So that's what we're currently doing. This is a very interesting and colorful visual of our workload, I guess. So it's color-coded, and you could see that the black dots are what hasn't received a field inspection yet, which is really step 2 of what we produce in the program. This is just a visual. It looks very scary, but it's something we are trying to gulp up and chunk down as much as we can. But we have a very popular program. We have a lot of communication from residents and even internal folks who wish for sidewalks. But this is just a quick visual. Why is there a bottleneck? Oh my gosh. So about a year and a half ago, when I found out much of the bottleneck, one of the clear reasons is our field staff are typically there to inspect our construction. So during the construction season, which is 8.5 months of the year, they're supposed to be inspecting the project. So we really have 2.5 months to do field impacts more fully. So time is a constraint, and the manpower was a constraint. Actually, when I took the position, I actually hired 2 new part-time contractors to help with the impact. So we're slowly getting into those, but we're still about 1,000 requests behind, and we're growing each year for another 300 each. So it's a cat and mouse game, and depends who you'd ask who's winning. And again, we are currently doing it by hand. We have taken one step forward. We've actually requested them to, instead of by hand, to do it in Word and to save the document, and we are actually saving the Word document into a SharePoint where we can all access it as a group. But it may be on the next slide. Yes, this is the next slide. This is the tool we hope to be using. It's an app that you could use on a tablet. We have iPads in the office, so we're beta testing these to see if they could input the impacts more in a standard form, using the same words, having pull-down menus and check boxes. And once they're done, this file would be attached to the GIS web tool. Yeah, I think I've pretty much covered that. Okay, so this is during the proposal period where we decided that it's high in the priority list, more constructible than the others, has good merit to connect pedestrian generators, safety, and transit facilities. Once we are in that proposal period, we would mail out the packages out to the local resident, the adjacent property owners, and just give them a heads up and try to get some feedback. Also during that time, we offer that we can meet out with them on site and be more site specific. We can meet right in their front yard and tell them specifically what we're planning to build right in front of their yard. Yes. So you're probably aware of this, but these are typical pushbacks we receive during public hearings or general public. They don't want to shovel the snow on the new sidewalk. They're typically very concerned of the trees in their neighborhood. Some talk about the CO2 emissions, climate change, the non-porous surfaces that may affect the rainwater flow. Sometimes a sidewalk may take out a parking spot or two. Sometimes that spot is not even officially a parking spot. It's just putting their vehicle on the grass. Pollution and just a lack of needs. Next, please. Then we have the public hearing period. We would send out letters and news articles to announce that we would have a public hearing. We present the project information and discussion, and we give them a chance to testify if they are for or against the project. I think this slide just indicates that we are required to do a public hearing to give the residents advance notice that we are considering a sidewalk project. Next, please. The decision. There's a couple of factors for our decision. Complete review of hearing record, including all comments and testimony. We try to sense the degree of community support, and we ask and check, will the new sidewalk connect to existing sidewalks or a network of sidewalks? And also, will the new sidewalk provide safer access to public transportation, schools, and pedestrian generators? Now the fun part, the construction. This is just some quick steps on what our crews do. We mark the utilities, we mark the right-of-way to clarify that we are within public right-of-way. We post the temporary signs that say, hey, we're coming here, just be aware. That also includes, before we even get close to the properties, we knock on each door just to give these folks a heads up that we're just going to be there about a day or two. If you want to move your car, this is a good time to do it. Otherwise, you're going to be in here for a bit. We remove the trees that are impacted. We mark the area we're going to put the sidewalk, excavate and set the forms, and pour the concrete, apply sealant, and I forgot the last line. It should be replant trees. For every tree that we take down, we do replant 3 trees. Nice visual of our before and after. I'm really happy with our contractors this year. We actually have 2. DNF has been with us for a good while. We have a new contractor, HSS, and they're in the middle of a learning curve, so we're trying to get them up to speed with our construction process. Next.
I guess the question for the committee is, do you want to ask questions of the county at this point, or do you want to hear the SHA presentation and ask questions about all of them at the end?
Derek, so glad you're here. Are you all in a rush to get out of here?
We are not. We are not.
Sorry. Or you wanted it if you are. All right. Okay, we'll take some questions from colleagues for DOT. Can I just ask a high level? I don't have a proposal, but I might in the future. As long as I've been here, I think we have a system that is set up to both frustrate the public, frustrate council members probably, and make it harder to achieve what are our stated goals. Not to be too dramatic, but to me, we put most of our staff time, tell me if I'm wrong, we put most of our staff time, and according to slide 2, most of our money into the neighborhood requests that come in. And if I see a neighborhood request, and I'm Bobby, very glad you're here and very glad to hear of all the initiatives that you're pursuing, including getting rid of an access database. That's great. But the longer I've been involved with this, it seems like there's 2 things we're trying to do, and we sort of have the priorities in a different place. We have all these requests coming in from constituents, just like we do in many other neighborhood areas, street trees and crosswalks and other things. And if people with the best of intentions see a problem and they fill out the form, we tell them, great, thanks for your feedback. We're going to get on it. It might be 3 to 6 years from now, maybe if it passes all their tests we're going to set up, you're going to get a sidewalk in this area. Meanwhile, this body has unanimously indicated support for Vision Zero, as has the county executive and DOT, and for safe routes to schools. But that's not where most of our investment goes, right? And we make tweaks during the budget process to put more money into safe routes for school this year. We made a bigger investment than we have in the past. We made a big investment into doing the sidewalk inventory of the walk sheds around schools so that we could actually be in a stronger place to provide data driven prioritization of our safe routes to schools. Am I far afield wrong about any of this so far? Okay, and yet we're making tweaks sort of at the end that put more money and more staff time into what are our unanimously stated priorities, but we still have the bulk of the money and a huge amount of your staff time, it feels like, going into these requests from constituents who, they might all be great requests, but the constituents aren't so happy to hear back that they're not going to get a sidewalk for 3 to 6 years, if ever, and we're not so happy that we don't make faster progress on what are our stated priorities, which advocates want to see, particularly around schools and at dangerous crosswalks. So why not reverse the whole, I'm looking at you, Director Conklin, the whole building of the budget? As a previous CAO suggested, we do a zero-based budget. Why not put most of the money into Safe Routes to School and Vision Zero? I bet that would make an awful lot of people happy, and reserve a minority of the money for these long-delayed sidewalk requests and the process of sorting through them all.
So I'm not sure, I mean, I appreciate that, that perspective, and it's the transparency about the status of requests is one of the things that Bob's been focused on. I think the vast majority of the annual sidewalk program budget actually goes to concrete in the ground. And last year, we put down 30 miles of sidewalk. And
But this is all about where the concrete's going,
30,000 feet.
the selection process.
30,000 feet is a little bit less than 30
Good
miles.
thing Bobby's
It's 6
here.
miles. He's going to expect me to do 40 miles next year. No. So the bulk of the sidewalk program money is in fact spent on actual concrete. I think where the we've heard from folks that they want us to be more transparent about where they are during the request. And so that is an effort of where Bob is going there. And I think with some of the process, you know, as Bob pointed, we currently spend 3 months during the winter holding a bunch of public hearings.
Right.
And then we spend the rest of the year, when the temperatures are favorable, actually out constructing. And I think some of what you heard was that Bob's brought on additional resources to continue processing those requests throughout the year. Some of the details in some of the slides, I think this past year, we get about 300 or so requests a year.
Right.
The funding that we have, we can do 7 or 8 projects a year. The 7 or 8 projects that we did this year combined a number of requests. So it was actually 28 requests combined into that group. So, you know, yes, some of it's a function of the resources. Some of it is a function of going into the community and working through the impacts, and then getting to work and getting the concrete in the ground.
Sure. And I don't think of the safe routes to, I appreciate everything you're saying about transparency and this vigorous public engagement process you have around sidewalk selection. I wouldn't want to assume that the Safe Routes to School program or Vision Zero are automatically any less transparent. You could have as many hearings as you want around those priorities that fit that lens as well, either of those lenses, right? And so to me, if I were building a DOT budget for sidewalk division, I would want to, and I know you say, okay, great, council member, why don't you shut up and just change the budget around? But by the time we're doing that, we'd be taking away sidewalks from lots of people that were promised sidewalks in that CIP and adding them to school walk sheds, where it would be much better to me to do it on the front end at the executive branch level and structure the program that way. But tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think the way that the program staff has been going about it is trying to build in the prioritization framework into how they process the requests and to elevate those that tick more of the boxes about proximity to schools. Almost all of these sidewalks, even in the school walk sheds, are in residential neighborhoods based on where our schools are. So I think that's happening through a prioritization process. Now, you could take a budget-based approach to it and maybe separate the school-related ones into the Safe Routes to Schools program and not try to accomplish them through the sidewalk program. That would obviously be, an addition to that other program. And if you took the funds from this, of course, there's a huge backlog in the requests. So you would be diminishing the number of requests that didn't relate to schools that are implemented through the other program. You could do that. I'm not sure it would result in a much different outcome than if we get the prioritization effort working better. And a number of the requests actually come from Mr. Paler and his division, who's identifying the gap locations through the Safe Routes to School program. But there could be a budget-based solution to it. Right now, they're trying to base that based on putting more weighting criteria in about where the sidewalk is and what needs it serves. So that it's not purely just a walking route on a residential street, but it's a walking route that connects to things that are likely to draw pedestrian traffic and have a higher vulnerability to the safety hazards on the road.
You think a high percentage of your requests happen to fall around, say, a school walk shed or other access to
Well,
public facilities?
we have a lot of schools, and we're doing the evaluation work on where the sidewalk gaps are near the schools and through the other program, and those get fed into this program for implementation.
Right, okay, I appreciate that. I do remember just recently, and I'm not sure we have the same experience, just very recently, not just neighbors, but a state delegate very involved in this, suggesting to your division, hey, why don't we, where you already have a sidewalk plan in one neighborhood, it happens to be in my district, and State Highway, thankfully, is investing new resources in improving a crosswalk there. Why can't we prioritize the sidewalk connection to that crosswalk to get kids safely, not just across University Boulevard, but to the neighboring school? And not the constituent, but the state delegate was told, no, because we just, that doesn't work that way.
I don't know if anyone else knows the specifics of that situation.
I can follow up
Yeah.
with you offline, but that's often the response that I've seen. So,
I would hope that's not the outcome.
okay, yeah, me too, because to me, they should be coordinated. Bobby?
I'd like to add something. We have really improved communications, even internally with our highway services who do resurfacing projects. We coordinate with them. We actually send weekly reports where we are and we're going to be. We're coordinating with them. Also with State Highway. One that's sticking out is a Briggs Cheney and 29. We saw people surveying and said, where are you guys coming from? And they said state, and we talked to our state folks, and they were going to build. So we got their plans and built right up to their project limit. So I think at least
That should be happening, yes.
it actually happened. And yeah, they're actually, it's now the state's turn. They're going to build that intersection and going south. So from my perspective, I have seen much better communications internally and externally with the state. So it is happening, much more formal than it was what I saw before, like 2 years ago.
Right, no, that's good, and I think the state's blameless in this case. They're making the investment. Our investment should pivot off that and build on the state's. But anyway, on the larger question of why not invest more of the resources in Vision Zero, anyway, I hope you'll take that under consideration. Let me open it up to Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation. And the reason I had requested it during the budget session is because we all recognize the need to make our roads and sidewalks and streets safer, undeniably. And I'm glad to be serving with everybody here in Montgomery County who recognizes that need, in the executive branch, the legislative branch, and community groups. But clearly, we got catch up to do. And I think that's what the focus of this conversation is about, because from the budgetary perspective, we were having internal debates from the dais about where to put money. Does it go to Safe Routes to School? Does it go to the MCDOT sidewalk program? Does it go to other Vision Zero initiatives? And I think sometimes we get stovepiped into those categories and those different administrative ways of dispersing funds and building projects that we lose sight of our overall goal, which is partly communication, which was the last exchange the chair engaged in, and I appreciate his line of questioning. Clearly, we need more money for these programs, and hopefully, and I heard the conversation therein as well, hopefully more of the money that we provide goes towards the shovels and the cement to get the job done, rather than bureaucratic hurdles and other sometimes stovepipes and problems. But at the end of the day, this is about our residents, and we need to make sure that everybody feels safe, because all we have to do is open our phones, and it seems like on a daily basis somebody's gotten struck. On a weekly basis someone has gotten killed, and that's what we're talking about. And Mr. Gonzalez, I appreciate the presentation, And you had said at the beginning of your presentation that you all are changing almost every step of this process. And I welcome that. It's needed, this type of reform to do better with what we have, so that as we add more, we do even more. The interactive map I thought was really interesting. I'm glad to have seen that for the first time in this conversation. The crowdsourcing, the purple, which signified projects that are closed, I saw them. I saw some red, some orange that showed some pending projects, but the overwhelming majority of the dots on that map were magenta, were dark red, which signified requests. And if I heard correctly, there were 1,000 requests behind. And if I heard correctly, about 300 grow every year, 300 more, somewhere around there. And Mr. Gonzalez, I was listening very intently to your presentation because it's extremely important. And you had rhetorically said or asked who's winning as we're playing catch up. I cannot answer that question, but I know who's losing. And it's our residents, for the reasons I shared. In 2022 alone, there have been nearly 362 pedestrians and bicyclists who have been struck to date. And to date, 10 people have been killed. That's who we're talking about. That's why we're having this conversation. And I think the number that I saw in the packet was about, of the 300 or so requests that are made annually, only 8% are fulfilled. Is that correct? Approximately? Rather than have you do the long division, what I'll say is I saw 337 requests that were made in 2021 and only 28 were met. So I did the back of the envelope math, 8%. Okay. One thing about the proposal that you've made, in which you emphasize equity, emphasis areas, schools, pedestrian facilities, public transportation facilities, and pedestrian accidents, reached out to the city of Rockville, who I regularly engage with. And they have a different way of gauging projects. They have schools, but they also have community center, park, library, and senior centers. They also emphasize the Bipa areas. And, where areas of sidewalk where there are missing sidewalk, where the sidewalk ends and then begins again. And so I share that because I encourage you, just like we're talking about the State Highway Administration, to see what some of our municipalities are doing. And I think Rockville does a really good job of building sidewalks with what they have. And so maybe taking a look at some of those criteria to see how they match up. But, the larger question that I have for you all, and again, I appreciate the information which reduced a lot of the questions I had. What is the magic number, right? As we talk about budget, because that's what this really all comes down to, and that's why I requested this conversation during the budget. What would be enough? What is necessary? What should the funding streams be? Does it make sense to divide it between the 3 different initiatives and then other initiatives that we might have? I'm looking at you, Director Conklin is nodding. How should we rethink this if we are already rethinking the way it's implemented? I'll throw it all to you all to figure out.
Yeah, I was nodding. The other initiative is the Bipa Initiative, which has standalone projects, and we're also implementing projects in other CIPs for specific facilities that are approved by the council. So the sidewalk program itself is a piece of the puzzle it's really addressing. Primarily neighborhood and residential streets that were built decades ago before sidewalks were a normal component of the construction. So it is definitely a piece of the overall puzzle. I don't know if there is a magic number. There's certainly a capacity to implement constraint on this based not just on the funding, because I think we are pretty much using the funding that's available to get concrete in the ground, which isn't something that sounds right, but we're trying to get the sidewalks built. But there's also a capacity of the local industry to serve that. So I think we need to do some looking and see what the limits of the contracting community are to meet this program need, to figure that out. And I do think it would be worthwhile for us in the formulation of the 24 budget to take a look at all of these programs together. There are probably 4 that are substantial contributors to this. the Bipa program, the sidewalk program, the Safe Routes to School program, and the general Vision Zero related funding, which is really focused more on the studies and design component than the construction component, and have a little better sense about how we're meeting the needs, particularly in the high incidence locations that are part of the Vision Zero framework, where you'll have a presentation in a little while where most of the serious collisions are occurring. So the work is happening, but I think you're right, there's probably not a broad enough umbrella of understanding about how all the pieces fit into that puzzle. And we can do a little bit of that work between now and when we see you with budget proposals.
I appreciate that. I agree with that assessment and would encourage reframing these action items, this bucket of funding in that upcoming budget as you're already working on it. And last question I have, and you brought this up, Director Conklin, during budget you were telling us about capacity, and even if we increase the budget for any one of these particular items, there might not be an increase in sidewalks built just because of contracts or contractors who are unable. Is that still the case? What is the landscape analysis of sidewalk construction?
It's probably
in the DMV?
even more the case than it was then. All of the contractors in this environment are facing their own labor shortages and shortages of material, so it's harder to get the projects implemented than it was even 6 months ago. Part of the issue is just the local availability and a contractor's willingness to travel here to do the work from a more distant location, or the sort of startup cost. If Montgomery County had such a large program that we were so attractive, you decided to locate a new contracting business here, which would be desirable. There's a lot to overcome to get somebody to do that in terms of more favorable contract opportunities in other jurisdictions, just with fewer administrative requirements. A very large work program by my colleague next to me in the State Highway Administration that draws a lot of resources. So there is a finite amount of this type of construction that can occur each year, and it's more hamstrung now than it was 6 or 8 months ago. That might change. I mean, we might see a change in that with the supply chain recovering a little bit, maybe the labor market changing a little bit so that this work is more attractive for people. But right now it's difficult.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes gets lost in the conversation, the external economic realities and workplace challenges to get this work done. Something for us to consider, but I appreciate you sharing that insight. Thank you.
Could I add something to this? In terms of which bucket to go into, if the main concern is safety, the sidewalk program itself is probably a relatively low priority, because as Chris mentioned, we're really here talking mostly about sidewalks on residential streets where the speed and the volume of traffic is low. Where the volume of pedestrians are high and where the speed are higher in the CBDs, the Bipa projects are probably really high priority in that respect. And I would even say the Safe Routes to Schools program, to the extent that we're talking about building sidewalks, is probably, while it's useful, it's probably not as useful as, say, improving crosswalk visibility and other things which allow kids to be able to cross where traffic is moving and it's a little bit unpredictable than even on the street itself. It's certainly worth doing, but I think the biggest bang for the buck, frankly, is in the Bipa projects, as well as some of these larger state or county projects where they're along more major roads where there is the real propensity for pedestrians to be harmed.
Thank you. Councilmember Reamer, then Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. Great discussion. Really pleased to see the continuing growth in all of our effort in these areas. I'm a little unsure. Is there a component of the sidewalk program that requires a majority of affected neighbors to agree? That doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Or maybe it once did, but I don't
It
know.
never existed. That was the speed hump program has that.
Speed hump program
Speed hump
has a
program
majority,
does, but
but
the sidewalk
sidewalk
program
program does not.
Well, the department could talk about it, but they do sort of gauge what the level
Right.
of community
I saw in
support is,
there,
but
there's
it's-
a measure of
Yeah,
support for the project in the area.
that's more of a qualitative analysis rather than a quantitative one.
Right. Can you just talk about how you receive that, how you think about that, how you weigh that? I mean, I can say from experience, my own block, when I lived on Ritchie Avenue, tried for many, many years to get a sidewalk, unsuccessfully because there were several neighbors that were opposed. Finally got Bruce Johnson out, and Bruce identified a great solution of kind of going into the street rather than going into the properties as much, and that seemed to ease the way. But it never had unanimous support. But it was held up for many, many years from opposition, and perhaps a lack of someone coming to find that workable solution, because otherwise it was going to be one of those engineered projects that would have been millions and millions of dollars theoretically for a short stretch. So how do you, how is it recorded? How are the folks who might request a project able to ascertain what the level of community support is for that project, and so forth? What's the transparency to the community who might ask about that?
So I'll let Bob talk a little bit about the process that we go from when a request is made to when we've gone and said, well, there's some merit, and it becomes an actual proposal. Then, you can talk a little bit about the mailings and the sketches that are sent out. But I will say that one of the things that we try and do through that process, and even through the public hearing process, where that is a formal public hearing process, and it's civics in action right there, because it is actually one of the things I actually love doing. Even though people disagree, everybody's disagreeing very cordially. The public hearing process, lets everybody, gives a forum for folks to weigh their views, and then we take that and we will modify a proposal. We'll give a good, honest listen to what folks are saying. Things that frequently get modified in a proposal at that stage is, maybe we will take certain low-volume streets or cul-de-sacs or dead ends and so forth and remove them from the proposal. We may do some things to, as you said, narrow the street a little bit and try and avoid some of those tree impacts and arrive at something that, I don't know that we've ever done one that's gotten unanimous support, but at least folks feel like they've been heard, they've been listened. We got, some changes that folks can live with, and we're going in and building the project. Bob, you want to talk a little bit about that process between something becoming a proposal and through the public hearing process?
Sure. I wanted to start with the super easy best case scenario. Recent project I had was on Arcola Avenue. 5 houses. I knocked at each person's door, and I said, I didn't even have plans. I was like, we're thinking of putting a sidewalk in front of your property. Would you be for or against it? And all 5 of them were for it. And I was like, good. I will now start. I drew something on PowerPoint, very, very low quality, but I kind of gave them an idea what we were doing. And we were able to build that within a few months. It was just a matter of scheduling the contractor.
You built the sidewalk within a few months.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's rare. But that's our best case scenario. Knock at the door, sense what they wanted.
And that's
Now-
a convergence of high priority, high-speed road, shopping centers.
Correct. It was known, we knew that it was a perfect connect. There's a sidewalk on each end of the road.
Right.
There's a mass transit, bus stops. The county facility was across the street. So it was known to you could see the goat path that people were using. So it was heavily used. It made a lot of sense.
You
So
may
that
want to
was-
just also speak to the county code does allow us in that instance, if there's unanimous, a defined segment with unanimous consent.
Unanimous.
We don't have to go to the public hearing process.
that's-
So if you survey the affected property owners and they all agree, you don't have to proceed to public hearing.
Correct. So that's.
Okay.
So then the
But
next
one
time,
person could have held it up, one of the 5?
correct.
For
Then we
unanimous
would,
consent, yeah.
Right.
then we would go through the public hearing process.
And none of them were renters.
Well, we do check
When you
on
knock
that.
on
We
the
asked
door.
them. Those were not. Those
Okay.
folks at that place. So if one of those opposed the project, then we would prepare a proposal package, submit it to them officially, give them a month to meet with us one-to-one. And if it's still 4 out of 5, we probably will go through a public hearing process and invite everyone to testify it's usually a quarter mile radius, and we will have an official public hearing. Is that pretty much?
Okay, well, the big picture here seems like there's far more requests than we have the ability to build. And so almost every project has its critics. It's hard to know, I think a lot of residents might think that the reason that their project is not moving forward is because one of the neighbors doesn't support it, or 10 of the neighbors don't support it. But actually, most projects have critics, and there's a long backlog. So I think it'll be helpful for you as you're redoing this, and I'm glad you're redoing this, by the way. Great work. Really appreciate the rethinking and the enhanced use of technology. It would be helpful to that ranking. You're going to publish that ranking for that project.
Oh, yes.
So individuals will be able to identify how their project stacks up. So I think that'll be useful. And it's, again, I'm eager to hear from the state on these issues as well, because so many of the most dangerous transportation corridors are, of course, on the higher speed roads, and a lot of those are state. But I'm glad to see the Bipa project continuing to be very useful. We created that many years ago. It continues to grow and expand. And the use of the Sidewalk GIS, which started out of the Sidewalk snow clearing plan and has evolved into a very broadly useful tool. It's great to see that being used here as well. So thanks for the continuing work.
Councilmember Friedson.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the conversation. I'm really glad that we're having it. Appreciate everybody being here. I agree that I think everybody is committed to these issues. I just want to say that from the outset. I think it's really important. I think there has been a culture shift on the way in which we view these issues, but we're obviously not moving fast enough, and I really do think we have to go further in changing the way that we're thinking about how we approach sidewalks and how we approach roadways in general. I think we've just begun this process, but we're nowhere near where we need to be on the journey to get to where we say we want to go. And so I'll start with, I appreciate the Arcola example. You're a terrific public servant and you're knocking on doors, but there are about 330,000 residents in Montgomery County. There is no way we can have a system where we're literally knocking on people's doors to ask them if it's okay and if we can get their permission to put in needed infrastructure in public rights of way. And if we did the same thing and pulled everybody who came into a public building and asked them if it was okay to make a change to prevent something from falling from the ceiling that could potentially kill them, for instance, we would never allow that to happen. But we do allow it in this context, and it's really not a recipe for getting to where we say we want to go, to actually have roadways where we don't lose people with a level of regularity, as you heard from Council Vice President Glass, where we're having a collision on a more than daily basis and we're having a death virtually on a weekly basis on our roadways from conditions that are frankly preventable. I recognize the fact that there are real challenges here with funding, but I also think there's some challenges with the process. And I do question whether, even in the way in which you've described the changes to the process that you've mentioned, whether we're actually going to get to the end result that we want. And absolutely, the process changes that you're talking about are better than the current situation that we're in. I'm just wondering that at the end of that, once we implement it this winter, whether or not we're going to see us moving markedly closer to the policy goal that we've set for ourselves, to have zero pedestrian, bicycle, and car fatalities, driver fatalities on our roadways. I'm skeptical of that, unfortunately. First point, the presentation references, I don't want to feel like I'm nitpicking here, but the presentation references in multiple cases about accidents. Words do matter. These are collisions. They're crashes, they're not accidents. We've adopted a Vision Zero policy. The policy of the county is that we don't believe that any time there is a collision on a roadway that it was an accident. We believe that it was preventable, and we're working towards preventing it. So I would just encourage that the department be sensitive in putting out official presentations and putting out official notices and making sure that the language that we use is reflective of the policies that we've adopted. I understand it takes time to change vernacular, but I think that the words in this case matter, and they particularly matter because, you know, all of us have consoled families with dead relatives, and the way in which we use our words is reflective of the manner in which we view our job and our responsibility to look after them and honor the memory of those we've lost because of things that we could have done that we haven't done. I did have a few questions specifically on this. There are a lot of numbers in here, and you know it's a capacity challenge and the backlog problem, and it's a financial challenge and a money problem. But there are a number of different things. So at one point it says 1.2 miles, or excuse me, 1.2 million for every 5 miles. That was the traditional number that had been done. We've increased funding recently. We've gone to 6 to 7 miles per year. But then it was mentioned that we did 30 miles last year. So those numbers don't add up. That was shared earlier. So could you just clarify?
Sure. I misspoke. I meant to reference 30,000 linear feet, and instead I said 30
Got it.
miles.
30,000. Okay, so that's what you were correcting
Yeah.
earlier. I apologize. I didn't quite follow that was the point that you were making. Similarly, the 250 to 350 requests per year, that equals about 9 projects per year. That's what was stated earlier, but then it was mentioned that the 9 projects equal 28 installations out of a total of 337 requests. Can you differentiate between a project and an installation?
28 requests, because they I think earlier I mentioned if they also supported the same, it was like multiple requests for the same location.
So when you say an installation, it's fulfilling a request, but there could be multiple requests for the same stretch?
Exactly.
Okay. I would suggest we just pick one to use and not interchange back and forth, because I think it's very hard to understand, what we're referencing. And ultimately, if we were talking about this of what's the backlog, how much are we not fulfilling, we shouldn't double count the requests. If 7 people are requesting one thing, it's still one thing.
Correct.
So that's, I think, what we should be.
We'll stick to the 8%.
Yeah, be referencing. Speaking of the process that's changing, what is changing? I mean, I understand it's streamlining. I understand we no longer have a virtual veto of an individual. I mean, we do have a de facto veto, I will say. If we don't have nearly enough money to fulfill the requests, and the requests that are able to move forward faster get fulfilled, and the money that isn't available doesn't get fulfilled, that if you ask for a public hearing and that slows down the process, it moves it back into the queue, those are never going to get funded, or at least are not going to get funded anytime soon. And so in many ways, it's, to me, at least based on the information that you've shared, with 1,000 request backlog that's growing every year, it's somewhat a distinction without a difference, unless I'm missing something. Like, if you slow down the process, if you don't knock on every door and all 5 people don't enthusiastically say full speed ahead, let's go, then they get moved to the back of the line. And when they get moved to the back of the line, or at least the back part of the line, they have zero chance, based on the numbers that you've shared, to ever get fulfilled.
So the handling of the requests is going to have some major changes. Right now, there's a lot of manually extensive processing for us. So that's also man hours that we need to dedicate to take it in, transfer it to digital, translate it to a database, our own map that we're doing separately, and also our integration to our field folks to that same map. So communication just within our own section is going to be helpful. So the time from the office can help us provide more time towards the field operations, the actual laying down the concrete for the sidewalks. That process improvement in how to handle that should make us more efficient. And also, if if we can dedicate more time and money towards the construction side, you will see more linear foot of production rather than, we are definitely doing a lot of manually extensive office work just to manage. And the other thing too is the perspective of the residents. Since we do not have a reporting capability available yet, or to see where the status is, they call, we look it up, and then we report back.
Sure, there's no doubt it's going to add to efficiency, it's going to add to transparency. I think those are both terrific goals. I think the question that I still have is whether or not it will actually lead us towards the ultimate policy goal, and I still have concerns that we're not actually going to be building anywhere near the level of sidewalk infrastructure that we would need in order to achieve our Vision Zero goals. And I think that is largely what you heard from the chair. It's largely what you've heard from other colleagues on the committee. Everybody's happy to see progress, but the question is, how do we get to our desired outcome? And it's not clear to me, we might be taking a step forward, but it's not clear to me that we're going to be able to ever catch up to where we would need to go. And that's the question that we need to figure out, both from a process standpoint, because I think there's some real process challenges here that the new database doesn't seem like it's going to fix in and of itself. It might be part of a solution, but it is not the solution. And then there's obviously funding challenges, that we're not funding this nearly at the level that it would need in order to achieve the goal that we've all said that we share.
So, yeah, I appreciate those comments, and I agree with many of them. I think what Bob has outlined here is, a more rational and rigorous method to allocate the scarce resources, and so that the projects with the biggest bang for the buck percolate to the top, as opposed to the project that came possibly first into the queue.
Is there a quantitative manner in which we can judge that, or is that part of our presentation that we're going to hear next?
No, I don't know that it's part of the state.
Well, there's a tool that we're going to learn about in the next presentation, and I'm wondering if that's part of that solution, or at least if the department views that potentially as part of the solution.
Well, I think that would be a factor that would look at, okay, a future where might, given the characteristics of a particular.
Here's the problem. If I was in a class and the professor said to me, here are the factors that I will judge you based on, and didn't tell me the weighting of those factors, when I got my grade, I would go and complain. And I would say, how did you grade me? And the professor would say, well, I weighed all these factors. And then we would sit there and we'd shout at each other back and forth, and both of us would be convinced that we were right. And either both of us would be right or both of us would be wrong, however you want to view it. But there's no manner in any accountable way, in any transparent way, to determine in a quantitative way how that decision was made. And that's where I think we need to move this. And that's the question. We can't just say we look at a lot of factors and we've weighed those factors and we don't have nearly enough money, so we fund the things we fund and we don't fund the things that we don't fund. Because you end up with Chair Hucker and mentioning the issues that he's talking about, and you're never going to have a satisfactory answer for us. You're never going to have a satisfactory answer for a community that is asking for a sidewalk, unless we get lucky enough where we have Bob Gonzalez, a great public servant, knocking on 5 doors and getting lucky enough to have all the people home, all the people owning the home, and all the people saying yes to what's being proposed. And I would just note, I can't think of another public safety issue where we knock on people's doors and ask them if they are comfortable with us moving forward. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have public input. We absolutely need public input. But generally, public input is about how we implement, not whether or not we implement public safety measures. And I guess the real question here, because this whole conversation has really been about sidewalks as a nice to have, and not necessarily in many instances as a need to have to keep people safe. So the question is, do you think sidewalks in a normal circumstance, in a normal situation in the county, helps to keep people safe on roadways, particularly the most vulnerable users?
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that in mind, and I'll yield back because I'm not even on the committee and I've taken more than enough time, and I appreciate the indulgence, but I think we have to move to that mentality. I think we believe it, but I think we have not yet gotten to the point where we have shifted our thinking into the actual actions that we take, specifically related to sidewalks, but really more broadly when it comes to all of the policy changes that we deal with when it comes to roadways. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
I'm glad you took the time. Thank you. I mean, I've been in the public safety space for a long time, and where consumers are concerned, GM doesn't allow you to order a car without bumpers, or without seatbelts, or without airbags. Those, and there are people who opposed all those things over the generations. But we had elected leaders deciding, actually, these are priorities, so we're going to have mandates, and we're not going to make cars without seatbelts. And I think we ought to look at sidewalks. We ought to put sidewalks where they're needed for life or death issues. And I would rework the whole budget to make sure we're spending it, through a safety lens and not through just a convenience lens or a way to resolve disputes among neighbors. But if we don't have enough money, and if safety is not our top priority, to me, it should be, and the whole budget ought to reflect that. I have a couple other questions for DOT. One is, I appreciate, Bobby, the new GIS tool sounds great. I'm wondering why we didn't have it 10 years ago, and so shame on all of us. But you're going to be collecting right away whether requests are prioritized according to slide 9 as in a racial equity area, emphasis area, or in a school watershed, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but then on slide 11, 11's helpful as a powerful visual tool. We have to be in the program to see how many of these black dots are in a school area, right?
Correct.
But the fact that there's pink on there tells me you already know how many of those requests are in a school watershed?
That tool was, there are two different tools.
Yeah.
That tool was actually prepared by somebody very helpful in the director's office. And when we saw it, we're actually utilizing it as a temporary measure until we get the real tool.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's an overlay, right? But can you tell us now how many of the 1,400 are in the school watershed? In terms of numbers, not graphically?
I don't know, but there is a layer to turn that on.
We can do that calculation.
Correct.
One of the helpful people in the director's office can help us with that. I would love to see the data about how many of those 1,400 fall into a racial equity area, how many fall into a school watershed, and how many are in both. And if we're not prioritizing the ones that are in both, why not?
Well, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Michael.
Good to see you. So if those sidewalks do fall into a school area, they are subsumed under the SRTS program, and we are doing, as we look at the phase 2 assessments that we completed and are completing, if they fall in those categories, then we start moving them through the prioritization process to have them constructed.
They automatically default into that program, even if a neighbor doesn't like it.
That's correct.
Okay, just to be clear. Okay. A couple more for you. If you could get us that map and the data, that would be great. How we funded in the budget the countywide school safety analysis. How far along is that? What's the status?
Yeah, again, and I apologize, Michael Paler, DOT.
I'm not using the correct term for it.
So yes, that process has been completed. We have collected all of the gap information for those sidewalks, and we are in the final stages of our prioritization package. I think we're about 95% complete. So we've done the assessment, and we're coming up with a rubric to prioritize all of those gaps to get those complete.
Can you share a draft with us?
Yes, sir.
Is any of it public on your site now?
Yes, sir, it is.
It is?
In the Vision Zero. In the Vision Zero.
Okay, if you don't mind sending me a link and
Absolutely.
sending us the draft, that would be great, because
Would do that.
I bet we have 4 people with opinions about it
Yes,
here.
sir.
Which standard is currently being used for sidewalk design?
The state standard, also county
6
has
feet?
it. The sidewalk itself, state and county are pretty much the same.
So in our Complete Streets Design Guide now, you will see that
Right.
we've adopted for, kind of all new construction, 6 feet. I will say that sometimes that's one of the compromises in the area when we look to try and, if it's a choice between a foot of sidewalk and a tree and we can save a tree, then we might narrow the sidewalk at that, discrete location, as long as we will still comply with ADA
Right.
requirements. But yes.
What's the status of the countywide sidewalk inventory?
That is complete. So I think the one in the school zones, is he talking about, are you talking about the one, because there were two of them.
Right.
One was done a couple of years ago, and then this one is for our school
FOD did
walk
that,
sheds.
right, with
So
the-
are you talking about the school walk sheds one? Because that was the one I made reference to.
No, the second, no, not the first one's been completed, and
Yes,
you
sir.
can tell us where the gaps are now.
Yes, sir.
Correct? Okay, a couple are SHA related, so I'll stop delaying and we'll get to, sidewalk maintenance. Public's always confused about this, and then we get a bunch of questions, particularly whose job it is to maintain the sidewalks. People often raise that are in front of schools and in front of other public projects. It's all on the county,
Oh, yeah, if it's in.
regardless if it's on
it's in
the state
Maryland,
highway or not,
If it's
right?
in Maryland, it's a local jurisdiction.
Just to be clear, right? If it's in front of a school, it's you. If it's on a state highway, it's you, right? And all constituent requests should go to MCDOT in your helpful Twitter feed. Right? Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. Any other questions from anybody? Great.
If it's a county building, it's DGS.
Great.
I think that's the exception.
Just to confuse everything. Right. Okay.
I think it's a little confusing, because if you're talking about snow clearance, it's a totally different set of rules
Yes.
than if you're talking about the maintenance of the concrete.
The questions this time of year are always about brush, overgrowth.
And that is not always the county. That is often
The property owner.
the property owner or the State Highway Administration if it's in state corner. It's an issue that's very confusing. It would be much better if the maintenance for the facility was the responsibility of the owner of the right-of-way of that facility.
Yeah, this is a very important point, and I hope we can talk about this when we turn to State Highway. I'll first say I think State Highway, particularly our District 3 team, have made tremendous strides, and I want to express my appreciation for that. We have regular meetings to discuss these issues. We had a successful walk for one of our very dangerous stretches of roadway, not the only dangerous stretch of roadway. And between the time we scheduled that and the time that you showed up for the walk that we had scheduled, we lost another person on a state road, as we know. With this issue of overgrowth was a contributing factor, may have been the contributing factor, but was certainly a contributing factor to Enzo's death on Old Georgetown Road. And it was, I don't want to say fixed, but it was addressed after. But we need a process where we're making sure that these issues are addressed before. And so we've talked about this before, but I do think we need to work out who's responsible, how often it happens, when it happens, what needs to happen in order to make sure that our sidewalks are cleared. Because, again, we would never allow for a tree to protrude into a lane of traffic and have a car hit it. We would literally stop everything. There would be helicopter news crews talking about the outrageousness of that situation. But in roadway after roadway after roadway, overgrowth is an issue on sidewalks, and people have died as a result. And so, it's not an individual issue. This isn't blame for any individual person, but it is a systemic problem that we have to fix. I just want to, since you brought it up, I want to make sure that we note that, and I do hope either at this session or as a follow-up to this session that is a specific, tangible outcome that we address and figure out so that everybody knows who's responsible. Because for most residents, they're getting this. Mm-hmm. They talk to State Highway says it's the county's problem. They talk to the county says it's the state's problem. And it's all of our responsibility, and it seems that none of us are actually addressing it in a serious enough way. So we really need to move this forward. So with that, I'll yield back. But this is a life and death issue, and I want to make sure it's being discussed that way.
Thank you. And before we leave that topic, now you're reminding me, in Jay Castle's case, the obstruction, right, was placed there, I wasn't there, but my understanding is by a DEP contractor, probably.
Yeah.
And have we done it? We've had a discussion, but have we done anything, to your knowledge, to increase penalties or compliance or training of DEP contractors or any other contractors?
DOT has not done anything specific. There has been an interagency working group to try to reduce the blockages of the sidewalk and communication through DEP and its contractors. to make sure that doesn't happen, but that's been through the Department of Environmental Protection. In terms of, sorry, Andrew, in terms of the.
Is that working group still in place, though?
I'm not sure. I haven't personally participated in it recently. I know there was an ongoing pilot effort on university, but I can follow up and try to get
If you don't
the
mind,
status of
it's
that.
sidewalk related. I would hope you all
Yeah.
are helping lead it. Yeah.
Happy to do that. In terms of the sidewalk and vegetation issues, we have changed the reporting procedure for when something is reported to us that's a state highway issue, where we're directly sharing it with SHA and their maintenance shop, rather than trying to direct the resident to do that themselves, which is not something that should have happened, and we've corrected that.
Great.
Yeah, I think that is an improvement, again.
Yeah.
But it doesn't address the underlying issue, that it's not clear to me that we have a full handle on exactly who's responsible and when, what the schedule is for the maintenance, and how we can make sure that that is not the issue. I mean, talk about preventable. We're talking about trimming brush. I mean, this is like the lowest standard of maintenance imaginable, where literally people have died. And I can, and I know my colleagues can't, look any parent, any sibling, any person in the eye and explain to them that these issues are too difficult to tackle because they're billions of dollars of 100 years of infrastructure. This is about plantings. And if we can't get that right, it's hard for people to trust us that we're moving with the level of urgency that we believe. And it's still not clear to me. I mean, many, many months later, you're right on the DEP issue with the trash and recycling bins. Everybody on this dais actually wrote a letter. I drafted it. All colleagues on this committee signed it to try to address this issue. It seems to still be a challenge. And there are other challenges related to it. I mean, this is like the lowest possible hanging fruit that we have, and we still have challenges with it. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. We all learned a lot. That's great. Look forward to continue work with you. And we're so glad to be joined by our friends from State Highway. Derek, take it away.
Thank you, Council Member, and thank you, Council Members, for having us today as part of this discussion. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'll introduce myself, Derek Gunn. I'm the Acting District Engineer for MDOT SHA District 3's office. And with me today, I brought some folks from our Office of Highway Development who maintain and coordinate our various sidewalk programs statewide. And while we'll be kind of focusing in on new sidewalk programs, and I'll just kind of caveat that does not include any active construction projects. This would be independent, standalone sidewalk construction. We do have various other programs related to sidewalks and different platforms to fund those projects. On my right is Luis Gonzalez. He's our Office of Highway Development Assistant Division Chief. And again, he coordinates our sidewalk program, and with him is a team member, Marguerite Smith-Clark. Thank you, Marguerite. And I do want to take a step back because it's not lost on State Highway Administration what sidewalks really mean in terms of safety and mobility for pedestrians and our vulnerable users, and it should be a priority. And similar to the county, you'll hear that the needs, there's heavy demand for sidewalks statewide. Hopefully we can kind of center our discussion on how we prioritize those and how we move projects in a tight fiscal environment. I do want to touch a little bit, Council Member, on the maintenance. That is a key issue, and I believe we do need to kind of come to some consensus on that so we can communicate that effectively to our users and our residents. What we are doing at SHA is we're looking at a part of our pedestrian safety action plan, looking at some type of preventive maintenance and also looking at putting that into system programming. So it's not a seasonal initiative. We're kind of ahead of it on some of these heavily traveled corridors, which do not have buffers or heavy speeds and a lot of volume on the corridors. With that, I'm going to let Luis go through a few slides for us, and then we'll be here for Q&A.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Just to be clear, I'm going to be talking about the new sidewalk program. The program itself is not new, but it's targeting new sidewalks themselves. If we talk about sidewalks, like Derek mentioned, there's an innumerable amount of programs that all overlap with each other, and depending on whether the sidewalk is there or there isn't sidewalk, the requirements differ. So the process is different for each one of those. So for this presentation, I'm going to focus on the new sidewalk program so you get an understanding of how we process those. Can I go to the next slide? So the requirements of the new sidewalks, whenever the state receives a request for a new sidewalk, are pretty much stipulated in the Annotated Code of Maryland Transportation Article, Section 8630. Essentially, the code requires that whenever the state does construction or reconstruction of the highway itself, at that point in time, we will take care of installing new sidewalks wherever they're requested. But if there isn't need or request, that's when the state can not add the sidewalk in the reconstruction project. But where there is no reconstruction project, then you need to submit a request, and that means the local government itself, according to this annotated code, the local government must request that a sidewalk be installed by the state. And at that point, the state basically reviews the request and just make sure that there isn't a highway project ongoing to include that request in it. Essentially, the section 8630 puts a lot of requirements on the local municipality, local government. The local government in such a situation would be responsible for securing the right-of-way outside of MDOT-SHA's right-of-way. They're required to provide the public involvement part where the local government would be approaching and getting consensus from the residents on the installation of the sidewalk. And once that is done, the code also indicates that the local government is responsible for its maintenance. Another requirement that the code has is funding. Depending on where the project is located, there is a requirement for a funding split between the county and the state. Well, I said county, but it's actually local government. It could be a town, it could be a city. So the local government is required to provide a 50% funding for construction if the project is not within a priority funding area. That's the default. If it's within a priority funding area, the state can fund 75% of it for the construction, 25% is the local government. And if the project is within a sustainable community, as defined per the Housing and Community Development Article 6301, then SHA can fund 100% of the construction. That's, in essence, that's a very short snippet. There's other conditions in there. It's a very detailed section that involves a lot of ifs, depending on the situation. I can answer if there are questions pertaining to that. I'm pretty familiar with it, but I won't dwell on that. In terms of when we receive a request, the way we prioritize it, we have three primary components that we look at. We look at demand based on the short trip opportunity area model. Essentially, that's GIS layer. If you're curious about what that GIS layer shows, you can look at the Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan, the 2019, I believe it's page 37, shows a map of the entire short trip opportunity area model. It's sort of a heat map that tells you where we expect most short trips to occur. We use that as a way of predicting if there's going to be a lot of pedestrian activity without having to go out there and take a lot of detailed numbers so that we can get a good idea. Safety, unfortunately, we have to rely on pedestrian-related crashes. It's not pedestrian crashes themselves. If there's a crash and a pedestrian is involved, we use that to basically gauge. It kind of increases the ranking of that location. Connectivity, essentially what we do there is we compare existing sidewalks and see what this request would connect. The amount of connections that would be created by adding this project or this location. And then we compare all these and prioritize at a statewide level. So essentially, all sites compete at a statewide level to see which one is a higher priority. Whether we move forward with a site or not, that's more of a factor of how quickly we can move. It's more of an engineering and right-of-way challenge. Many of the issues that we tend to have are similar to what our colleagues in DOT have. it's the engineering for new sidewalks when there's already an area already built up makes it very challenging from a stormwater management perspective. The environmental and right-of-way being very constrained, it becomes very difficult. So that tends to be our biggest challenge in selecting projects to move forward. It's not so much the amount of requests, it's more of like the engineering challenge itself. Moving on. So the timeline is we get a request. The state tends to get either an email request or a letter of intent. What we do try to do is we try to go back to the local government to get an official request from the local government. We tend to get a lot of requests from people in general and advocates and sometimes by politicians. And what we try to do is like, we can look into this to see how it compares to everything else we have, but we do require that local government request because it's stipulated in the annotated code. There have been instances where we try to move forward with a project and then the local government indicates that they don't agree with that because they want something else, and that creates issues. So we don't move forward until we actually get that request. We prefer letter of intent. Letter of intent is basically a letter stating we've read the annotated code, we know what our responsibilities are, please move forward with this project. And at that point, we move forward full steam ahead, and it's mostly has to do with the engineering side. To tackle the engineering side, we have an initial step, which is the feasibility study part. That usually takes from 3 to 6 months. That part we usually do as soon as we get a request, depending on what we see. The part that we don't move forward is actual engineering until we get the formal request from the local government. If a site is turned into a project, the typical process for design is 0 to 30% in a year or more. Usually that part of the design has to do mostly, the timeline there has to do with stormwater management. Stormwater management tends to be the biggest issue when it comes to new sidewalk projects because you have to identify where you would provide right away. And one of the chicken and egg scenarios that we get on these projects is since the local government has to purchase the right of way, we kind of have to have a really good understanding of where we might propose stormwater management facilities to give an idea to the local government, hey, this is how much we need you to contribute to the project, even if it's within a sustainable community. It becomes a challenge because sometimes your location where you're providing right of way, it's not something that the local government is willing to move forward with for political reasons sometimes. Sometimes you're taking a farm and the farmer doesn't like that to serve the houses on the opposite side of the street, and that becomes challenging. Usually what we do is once we reach 30%, we get into a situation where we have an agreement with the local government just so that we know what the right-of-way is that we're acquiring and what the responsibilities are for funding. Once that is established, then you get to 30 to 100% design completion. And that's essentially when you move as fast as you can to get out the door and construct the sidewalk. And in terms of funding, the current funding levels on the new sidewalk program are in the CTP. I pulled the page on the draft CTP so that you could see our current funding levels. That's not entirely all program at this point. We do have several projects moving forward, and we decide on which projects are going to be funded based on our ability to get to the finish line in designing and engineering. But that tends to be the biggest hurdle in this program, has to do with getting to that finish line. And that page there has the requirements of our programs. There are other programs in there. There's the ADA program as well that tackles sidewalks, but that's mostly to do with if there's sidewalk out there today, we are required to upgrade it to meet ADA compliance. So it's another program that we use to tackle sidewalk issues as well. And that one is 100% on the state. If there's a requirement for ADA compliance correction that is in a state road, then we can take action through that program.
And if I can add, Luis,
Yes.
In addition to that program, we have our Fund 77 program, and that's a safety and resurfacing more at the corridor level. And typically, as part of that, those are single advertisement type projects, and we do a good share of ADA upgrades related to those projects as well. So there are a few forms that we do have at our disposal.
Yeah, I didn't want to go into all of those programs when you told me it was a 5-minute presentation. I was like, all right, how do I condense the world in 5 minutes? So let me just focus on one program. So that's what I tried to do for this presentation. So if you have any questions, that's the last slide.
Thank you so much. That's really terrific. I don't think you touched on this. What's the outlook for federal funding in the infrastructure law and through any other sources?
So the funding levels that you saw there already include funding levels from the infrastructure bill. Those funding levels are only available based on federal funding. Most sidewalk projects tend to qualify for federal funding. That usually doesn't present so much difficulty securing federal funding. The main issue we tend to have is just getting to the finish line of these projects. Meaning, if you give me a lot of funding and I'm not able to use it because I don't get to the finish line, it sounds like I'm not delivering because I don't have enough money, and it's more to do with the challenges associated with these projects tends to be very difficult. The one thing that we are doing with federal funding is what we're trying to do, and this is a recent strategy that we started to do, is leveraging those requirements from the county. For example, the 80-20, that 100% right-of-way acquisition part. What we started to do is we used language in the annotated code that allowed us to assist the county in 80% of the right-of-way acquisition with federal dollars, so long as the county provided the state match for those federal dollars. And at that point, we're able to get around the requirement of the annotated code without violating it, because we're not using state dollars to acquire right-of-way. We're using federal dollars, and the state is functioning more of like we're helping with the use of federal dollars so that the local governments can purchase the right-of-way and minimize their burden. And we're doing the same thing with the construction as well, to minimize that as much as possible. But there's still a local requirement. Typically, that tends to land at 20%, and it really depends on whether the site is federally eligible.
But the numbers you showed us, they include new funding from the infrastructure law?
Yes.
And grants from the RAISE program?
I don't think it includes grants. That part I'm not entirely sure.
Are you getting any of those?
I can speak.
Please.
So this one is just for the new sidewalk construction program. There are other grants and other programs, as Luis mentioned, and those, might have received those federal funds as well. But these numbers that you see here, they've basically doubled, almost doubled from previous years. So it does include some of that federal money from the infrastructure bill.
Great. Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I came in with a few questions that you answered during the slides. But one thing I just want to drill down a little bit more on, when talking about the local jurisdiction agreement, the question I had was, when delegates and senators advocate, and we have incredible leadership here that serve in Annapolis, that do respond to residents and regularly invite you all out, invite us out sometimes as well. And you need, just to make sure I understand it, you need a letter from the Department of Transportation to greenlight any of that advocacy to move forward. Is that correct?
Yes. So we try to. We need a letter of intent. Typically, we can also collaborate. There have been instances where we collaborate with the MCDOT, and they pretty much tell us, yes, we're going to move forward with this project. And getting that letter of intent is more of like, you get it anyways, so we move forward. But if we don't ever get an actual letter or an official request, we are very hesitant to move forward, because we end up spending a lot of resources to then find out that it's not agreed that right-of-way funding is going to be there, or the other necessary components. So we need that in order to move forward and meet the annotated code requirements.
And I appreciate that. Very illuminating for me, because I've had many conversations with members of of the General Assembly who've been advocating and wondering why things aren't happening. And so now to know where sometimes I guess a missing piece or a breakdown in the process is, that is helpful. With the funding scheme for those projects, it's 50-50 for non-priority funding areas and then 75%, 25%, 75% from the state for the priority funding areas.
Yes.
What is a priority funding area?
So priority funding areas, dude, you can Google it online. It's a layer. It's similar to the VPPAs. It's essentially a requirement for where funding is going to be prioritized in the state. I do know that the layer is available online. If you Google priority funding areas, Maryland, there's a GIS layer that lets you know where they are. Same goes with sustainable communities. Essentially, it's in the annotated code.
Yeah, so basically it's part of the, it's a different state agency that sets the priority funding areas and sustainable communities, so it's more of the housing and such.
Mr. Couples is joining us.
Mr.
So if
Glass,
you want to elaborate.
most of the county is in a priority funding area. Most of it is. But could you explain where the sustainable communities are in the county, the 100% money?
So if you Google priority funding areas, the same layer that shows priority funding areas shows sustainable communities, and it's a very detailed map that you can go in there and actually see highlighted if an area falls within a priority funding area. It's a little tricky because it doesn't really show you the road, so you kind of have to look at GIS and look at the imagery and then use some other imagery to find out where your project is and just overlay it. It should be easier, but if you Google priority funding area, there is a GIS layer that includes the sustainable communities as well.
We will Google priority funding areas, although I'm glad to know that he's Googling in real time. And glad to know that most of the county already falls under that category, and rightfully so. Glad to know that we don't have to push there. But the big question is this. It's the big problem that we have. A disproportionate number of people who are injured on our roadways are injured on state highways. How do we solve that from the SHA perspective?
I think let me start and then you can jump in there. I think we have a few efforts and initiatives that I'll be here tomorrow and we'll be speaking to that a little bit more on the Vision Zero side. Some of our pedestrian safety action plans, it's kind of nested into our larger effort of how do we get to Vision Zero. Context design, some of which we've talked to the council and folks about, and how quickly we can deploy that. For the pedestrian safety action plan, that is using a data-driven focus, and truthfully, that's a word that I feel a little uncomfortable using sometimes, data-driven. But the bottom line is that it's a data-driven focus and a tiered approach to identify corridors, which we need to make sure we're paying the utmost attention to, and coming up with solutions coming up with solutions that are a little bit longer term, and making sure that those type of corridors are funded fully for those type of improvements, and not just from a grant standpoint. Marguerite spoke a little bit about the different federal grants that are associated with sidewalks, the Transportation Alternative Program, and a few other ones, but making sure that we have allocated funding to do something meaningful on these corridors of essentially high travel, high speeds, and we have a lot of vulnerable users on those corridors. Luis, did you want to add?
Yeah, no, in terms of how we prioritize, we definitely look at requests, and we definitely focus on safety. One of the you found the priority funding area.
We're just checking the Google.
So we do take that. What we do try to do is, as part of our other programs, is we're trying to use the resources that we do have to prioritize areas that have a larger amount of crashes. Like Derek mentioned, there's a statewide effort to select priority corridors that we want to target. My team we are also taking that into consideration in our programs, just to see, all right, is this within a priority corridor that we want to target? And we do have mechanism if we have an area that is a particular concern that we can take action unilaterally, but it's not all that clear the extent of that power that the annotated code leaves us. So we are trying to make sure that we focus on areas that it's crystal clear that you cannot make the same argument everywhere here. This is a unique area that we definitely, the state can take unilateral direction here without having a local government request.
Sure, and I appreciate that, and I'll wrap up by saying that for me, the concern is less whether SHA does something unilaterally, but more that it does something. And as long as that communication and that coordination with either the county or the municipal government moves forward and isn't stalled for whatever reason, possibly money, possibly bureaucracy, possibly community input, want to make sure that we continue making our residents safe, because again, I'll reiterate what we all know, that a disproportionate number of our incidents are happening on state highway. And so that you are an integral part of this conversation. I remember having a briefing 3.5 years ago or so at the beginning of this council session. Then SHA Administrator Slater came to us and said that there was transformation that was taking place, recognizing that Montgomery County is not Carroll County, is not Frederick County, and that the nature-dense, urban, dense, mature, suburban community that we are means as SHA cannot take a broad brush stroke like it does in other places. And so I know that that framework has been adopted and that is being implemented now. And I see on the map the power of the Google, thank you, Dr. Orland, showing what those priority areas are here in Montgomery County. And it is a large swath of the residential community, certainly our urban areas, certainly our dense suburban areas, going on up to Germantown as well. So thank you, Dr. Orland, for helping visualize that. But more work to do, more coordination, and appreciate this update.
One mention, if you go to layers and select sustainable community, you will be able to see that as well. Nice. On the top where it says about, to the right. Layers, yes. If you select sustainable communities, and there they are.
So those would be 100% funded by SHA for construction. But again, that doesn't necessarily cover the right-of-way, which ends sometimes being something that can hinder a project moving forward.
Okay. Councilmember Reen?
Thank you. So 2 examples are on my mind. And the first, we've talked a little bit about sidewalk maintenance. Can you just say from your perspective, when there's vegetation growing into a sidewalk on a state highway, maintenance falls to the county in all respects, or how do you view that? How would someone who wants to ensure that that isn't happening best take action?
And Director Conklin discussed that a little bit, and he kind of also said that there was a little bit of a opaque side to that. How we treat it at the district level is that if there's brush or sidewalk on a brush or overgrowth on a sidewalk, and it falls outside of the local property owner's jurisdiction, that our maintenance folks will tend to that. Now, I guess the definition of maintenance kind of needs to be clarified a little bit. Anything above ground, typically our maintenance folks on both of our maintenance facilities will try to clear that brush and get that cleaned up. If there's something from a stability standpoint with the sidewalk, structurally it's not sound, then that's usually when our local DOT will step in and they'll try to do some remedial work at that location.
Okay, so but it's complaint driven, presumably?
It's historically, yes. We have a pretty robust platform, a customer care management system, and it's statewide, and folks can go to that. It's online, and folks can go to that platform, and there's a drop-down menu depending on the category and the concern, and they can reach out to the state, and we receive that, and we generate a service ticket. Like was mentioned a little bit earlier, that's a great platform, but we're trying to expand that and make sure that we're getting ahead of these concerns, and not just to respond in a seasonal variety to program some of these corridors that we know are heavily traveled and that the brush happens annually, that we can get ahead of that.
Okay, so filing complaints is good for your information because you're able to then see better where things are recurring and seasonal and so forth.
And what the complaints do, very similar to the county, is it's a GIS layer, so you can kind of spatially take a look at where the focal areas are and make some decision-making, based on that.
Okay. I'm thinking specifically of Old Georgetown Road approaching into, many, many stretches of it, but coming into Bethesda, there's a lot of vegetation that grows into the sidewalk. It's quite narrow. But I'll follow up separately. Second question I have more to specifics of sidewalks. Again, specific example, I'm thinking of Veers Mill near Newport Mill. There's a desire path on property from the bus stop around the corner. There's a middle school and a high school back in there. I still don't understand why we don't have sidewalk infrastructure there. Is that because the county is seeking to do a significant infrastructure project and therefore you don't want to proceed? I know you're familiar with requests for sidewalks on Veers Mill. So, what's the systems? What has been the process and the review of that specific location?
Thank you, Council Member. And that corridor is a stretch because of the needs, basically, and the school children and folks crossing at bus stops that we have had. We wanted to put a little bit more, not even a little bit, more emphasis on. I think it was mentioned a little bit earlier about tying in some of these singular projects with longer corridor-type projects. If there's a signal going in or some type of hawk treatment, and tying that up or connecting that with some sidewalk infrastructure, that makes all the sense to the world. It's sense in the world to me. And as a multi-agencies, we have to make sure that we're kind of coming together and taking advantage of those opportunities to fund some of these corridor-level improvements. I know with 586, Luis, there's been a few feasibility studies that have been in the works. That kind of supplement some of the ongoing activity at that location. For example, at the Norris Drive, we just constructed the signal. And for a little bit further upstream, I believe at Andrew Street, we have a programmed pedestrian hybrid beacon project. So we need to make sure that connectivity is in place along the corridor. Luis, did you want to speak a little bit to that segment?
We did have a request from the county on Veers Mill Road, 586. We did start a project there. There was a recent communication with Montgomery County DOT where there was a conflict where they were doing a similar project in the same area. I don't think I'm not sure if it's the same exact area you're referencing, but we're still in communications with them to see what needs to be done, whether they're going to move forward and we are going to move forward with other locations. It's not that we're not doing anything. It's more of like, well, we can't proceed until we clear this up type of situation. So if the county's already constructing something in the same area we are, it doesn't make sense for us to spend engineering dollars doing the same thing the county's doing.
And kind of to elaborate on that, Luis, we know that the county has it's a vested corridor because of the BIPA, the Wheaton BIPA, and they also have some longer-term visions for that corridor. So we do need to make sure we collaborate, but we also need to make sure these projects are moving forward and not getting hung up on bureaucracy.
If I can add, and maybe Chris or Tim could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the Veers Mill Road BRT project includes a lot of sidewalks along Veers Mill Road, including, I think, maybe this section. And the idea is that there's going to be a single application to the feds to fund the project, which includes the BRT, but also sidewalks along it. I'm not sure about this specific location, but
I was just trying to look to see whether this specific location was in there. I believe
Can you pull
is.
it up, Glenn, on the map? Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I believe it's in the application and part of the BIPA project for this quarter already. I was just trying to find out myself while you were talking. I wasn't able to exactly hone in on it. Yeah, that application has been submitted and the project is accepted into that federal program, and we've received our confirmation of NEPA class of action, so it's well underway to advance through our program as part of that one larger BRT project.
I mean, that's like sort of what I expected you were going to say. Like, on the one hand, it's good news that something big is moving forward, and it'll address really comprehensively what we need. Sorry, Glenn, I was just thinking more of the map, but you know, in places, there's places where we still could use, even if it's half a block to the bus stop. I mean, I have driven on Veers Mill and seen people walking in the shoulder, literally on Veers Mill.
Yeah,
And, you know, that's just,
it's one of the more challenging
Unacceptable.
spots with some of the grade relationships to the adjoining property, so I'm not sure it's an easy build to pull out of that project, but it is definitely needed.
well, yeah, I mean, it's just a good example, I think, of, that's why I asked about it, because of all these challenges. But if there is a way, knowing that we're going to do something later, to come in and just have something paved so that, because of that grading, I think that's the problem. It's the grading there, and you're saying, oh, this is a big project, and we're going to have to do all these things, and then it just sits. And then, you know, as a result, I think everybody who uses the road feels like the county is not on top of the situation and sort of turning a blind eye. And we're actually looking at it. We're just not taking short-term action. So, all right. Well, I appeal to you for that solution, a short-term solution that creates a bus stop connection that is at least only intended to be temporary while we move forward on the bigger project. It's just been on my mind. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. I appreciate the indulgence here again by colleagues. Appreciate Council Vice President Glass mentioning when former Secretary Slater was here. I had lunch with him in Rockville Town Square and was urging the need to not treat US 50 the same way we treat Colesville and Georgia and 355 and all these other state highways in Montgomery County that are in urban areas that are denser in many ways to the city of Baltimore, denser in many ways to many cities around the country, and was pleased with the work that has been done to create what have become the context-driven guidelines. And I think he deserves quite a bit of credit, and all of you deserve some credit. That's really positive. I think the challenge has been, and I know in sharing some conversations privately, with how do we implement that, and some frustration with actually implementing that. And I know with this pedestrian safety action plan, perhaps finally now is the moment when we can turn presentations before the council into actual changes at the department level. I know you're advocating for those changes, but until we pair these two things together, it seems like we're not going to see the changes that we want. And I know that you are working towards, and particularly in District 3, where you see so many of these challenges, where people do cross the street to go to work, to catch a bus, to drop their kids off at school, things that may not be happening in many of the other state highways and many of the other parts of their state. They're happening here, and we need to have engineering decisions that reflect the on-the-ground realities that we face and that we have talked about, unfortunately, multiple times in these community walks after tragic deaths on our roadways. I did want to ask about the pedestrian safety action plan. In general, when do we expect that to be implemented, actually used by the department to make its decisions? And specifically related to that, you mentioned the maintenance aspect. When do you expect the decision on exactly how we're going to handle this maintenance issue related to overgrowth? The issue of if the sidewalk itself needs repair and that's the county's responsibility, that's one thing, but this lowest of low-hanging fruits, the idea of brush that can kill people, when do we expect those things to happen?
Thank you, Council Member. The Pedestrian Safety Action Plan is kind of reaching its final stages in terms of development. We just want to make sure we get that right. What I would tell you is that the preventive maintenance is an integral part of that, each corridor, and making sure that we have a comprehensive maintenance plan in place to make sure that the corridors the upkeep is there, and that we're clearing the sidewalks and making sure there's no overgrowth or obstructions for anybody using our sidewalks. So that'll be baked into that naturally, and I can tell you that that doesn't have to wait for a finalized plan at the district levels, and not just District 3 across the state, all of my counterparts at the other districts. We're working to deploy those type of measures now and get some type of metrics on the ground where we can say confidently that we have plans to make sure that the sidewalks are clear going into heavy vegetation season. So that's happening now, and it doesn't have to wait for a finalized plan.
Appreciate that. I just want to point out, I think the customer care management system that you talked about is fine, but if we're relying on residents to complain before we do the maintenance that we need, we're failing. And I think we all have to realize that. We all have to understand that. I know that's how you talked about it before, which I appreciate, but I think we have to create a system where that's a structure that allows residents to hold us accountable for failing to meet the system. It's not the system. And as of right now, that is the system. The system is we are setting up, asking residents to basically crowdsource problems and then tell us what we need to do, which is completely unacceptable from a government infrastructure standpoint. We do not, in any other context, expect residents to tell us when public infrastructure is too unsafe for them to use before we put in place a process to fix it. Again, I understand these processes take time, but I think this new action plan with the context-driven guidelines have to get us to a system where we are preventing these issues and have a regular maintenance schedule that prevents them. And if we fall short of it, we fall short of it, and we have to fix it. But we can't set up the system where we fail before we even start. And right now, for decades, we've had a system that fails before it even starts, and we have to turn that around. You mentioned earlier about data-driven, and I really appreciate that. I know the department is moving that direction. We're going to get a presentation if I stop with my questions soon enough, and everybody doesn't need to go home. From our planning department, I'll note it's actually a state agency's planning department that happens to be located in Montgomery County. But they are collecting data. They have a new tool that they have put together that relates specifically to this issue. Do you think there would be a willingness of the department to utilize this tool or other tools that have data that can help us to address these infrastructure challenges as part of your new action plan and as part of the new context-driven guidelines?
Short answer, yes. A lot of different inputs went into that pedestrian safety action plan. Some of it was user-focused, and a lot of it was the STOAs that I believe Luis mentioned a little bit earlier, just a lot of different levels. Something that we didn't speak about is on the statewide level, there is our Maryland Highway Safety Office, and they come up with they develop a 5-year program called the Strategic Highway Safety Plan, and they consider a lot of these data inputs and try to consolidate those into one kind of cohesive unit, including work from park and planning and others. And I know there was some good work with that predictive model. We were eager to see that come online. So any input that helps us get to our goals, I think that's usable from our standpoint.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something about, I work more day-to-day on the engineering side. So I just wanted to talk about how we've been kind of trying to implement the pedestrian safety action plan even before it's finalized. Every time we receive a request, we're starting to kind of know if it's in one of those priority corridors and give it a little bit more priority as well for those in those identified corridors. And also for the context-driven, it's not just maybe we have the context-driven of what each context, how it's defined, but recently we also put out a toolbox, and that toolbox has different improvements that you could do. So, the type of crosswalk that you use, the type of, if you have the rapid beacons as well, for bicyclists, also the protected intersections. So we have a toolbox with different improvements that we've been trying to look at, where they could be useful, and definitely see more of that, put in place, and not just the planning part.
I appreciate that. We need to make sure that the processes are as user-focused as the potential infrastructure is going to be, right? Like the idea of having a customer care input where a user of a sidewalk is supposed to go online, go to a drop-down menu, search for the type of requests that they're supposed to put in, identify the intersection that they pass. I mean, there's nobody on a bike, there's nobody who uses a stroller that actually is going to come in contact with that problem in any imaginable and reasonable standard is going to be able to do that. And so, I hope that we can just shift our thought process, not just about the engineering standards and the context that we're moving towards, but about the process that we have set up. We should not and we cannot just be relying on residents. And that's why I think the predictive analysis is so important. I do believe that you are focused on data now more than you ever have before, and I appreciate that. I think the challenge is that the data that we're using is still more reactive than proactive. And that's why we need predictive analyses like what the planning department is about to present to us, because we can identify where someone might crash and where that crash might lead to a fatality within a reasonable level of certainty. And if we can do that, we can prevent the crashes from happening. So I would just urge that we not wait till the tragedies happen, wait till somebody calls because something terrible has happened that rises to that level, and then use that for the data, but be much more proactive about it. Can I ask, we have the map up here and we get a better split between sustainable areas and most of the county is priority area. How many county requests has the state received to date, and how many have been funded?
From Montgomery County, we did in our programs, we have received. I know of several in the bicycle retrofit program. In the new sidewalk program, I only know of 586. We haven't received that many from the county, and I think there is some miscommunication at some point that may need to be cleared up, why that hasn't happened. But we do coordinate with MCDOT on several requests for bicycle projects. I think that might be one of the things that we might have to improve on.
So I was just going to add that oftentimes the first time we aware of a request on a state project is in our coordination with the state in our monthly meetings, and then we will author a request after coordinating with them, and then the funding that we go to contribute to meet the local match requirements, we take that out of the annual sidewalk program, so we're able to leverage the county funds, and oftentimes it's going to be
Am I getting this straight? The state doesn't move forward until the county requests it, and the county doesn't request it until the state tells them to request it?
No. We will coordinate with them on the requests that they receive. We will, if it's just a matter of a piece of paper saying...
They receive a request from who? A state delegate or a state senator?
They'll receive one from someone that is not that'll be for a government resident or something like that. And then we'll author a request, and then we'll leverage the county money in the annual sidewalk program. That's usually where the funding source for the local match comes from, and it'll go to the state program, and then we're getting a good bang for the buck in that case.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point, but a process that relies on a resident to request it, the state and the county to have a meeting, the state to tell the county to request it so that the county can get a match is not a very good system. So we need to work on that. The fact that we only have one request on programs that are matched at 75-25 or 100-0 with state dollars, we have to coordinate better, and we have to work better together. I think the overgrowth and shrub issue is an example. This is an example. We're the government. Whether we're in a different agency, a different department, different level, the public doesn't care. And we need to coordinate and collaborate better than it seems like we are. I just, last point, and then I appreciate it. We talked a lot about new sidewalks. I did want to highlight the need to change the sidewalks we have that are completely outdated. Many of the issues that we have are on sidewalks like the ones that we talked about, Veers Mill, Old Georgetown Road, Georgia Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, that have sidewalks. They're just sidewalks that were built a long time ago. They have no buffer. They are, for I guess stormwater reasons, are tilted towards the roadway. They have all kinds of obstructions in them with fire hydrants and signs and other issues, sometimes county contractors leaving trash bins and recycling bins, and they are literally dumping people into the road, which is causing the conflict. We were doing our walk the other day on Old Georgetown Road. Somebody fell. They tripped. And it was because of a minor maintenance issue in the sidewalk. And they fell into a small sliver of buffer that stopped one block up. And I made the point in that moment that if that person had tripped 100 feet south of where we were on that walk, if it was in the moment that a car came, that person would probably be dead. And that is true in so many roadways. So it's important that we look at the new sidewalks, and there's lots of dangerous places, particularly where people catch buses that don't have sidewalks, which is unacceptable. But we also have existing sidewalks that are completely outdated and wholly inadequate for people to use them in a safe manner, where somebody who trips, somebody who falls, somebody who swerves out of the way of an obstruction that we've created, rather than scraping their knee or their elbow, could die, and probably will die. And we've got to do better than that. So with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, colleagues. That was terrific. I think we all learned a lot. Thank you all so much for coming, all our friends from State Highway and from DOT. We're going to move on to bring up our friends from the Planning Department. Thank you all for patiently waiting. I know you don't know anything about sidewalks, so hopefully you learned a lot as well. That was a joke. Sorry. Anyway, let's get started. I have to be done by 4. I apologize. So, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we'll make this quick because Councilmember Friedson gave our introduction just a few minutes ago when he pointed out that what we're doing here is trying to not close the door after the horse has left the barn, but to predict when the horse might break through and run loose. And that's what this presentation is all about, using data to forecast what's going to happen, not just to look at what's happened in the past.
Good afternoon. I'm Jessie Cohn-McGowan. I'm going to be talking today about this predictive safety analysis. So historically, transportation agencies have looked to the past, to where severe injuries and fatalities have happened or crashes have happened, and said these are the places that we need to make improvements. But unfortunately, that requires people to be killed or severely injured on our roadways for us to make changes. And so the predictive safety analysis, instead of looking behind us, looks ahead and takes a more proactive approach to transportation safety. Go next slide. So as part of this effort, what we did is we estimated the expected number of crashes at intersections and segments countywide for 6 key crash types. And the purpose of this is both to better understand the problem, why are we experiencing these different crash types, as well as to understand what are the solutions, what are the types of safety improvements we can make to improve safety in the county. And so we did this work with the UNC Highway Safety Research Center. They're really experts in transportation safety and research. So you may be wondering why it is we have to estimate or predict the number of crashes when we do know what's happened in the past on our roadways. So throughout this presentation, I'll talk a bit about the term crash risk. We rely on crash risk to make our recommendations here rather than crash history. We may have 2 intersections in the county that look very similar, have similar volumes, similar configuration, number of lanes, speeds, but one has experienced, say, 5 more crashes than another. That may just be kind of the stroke of luck. That may be not necessarily based on the random nature of crashes. And this is particularly true when we think about bicycle and pedestrian crashes. Fortunately, those are relatively rare in the county. I mean, we do still see them happen and have some severe injuries and fatalities. But relying just on crash history, and when we think about bicyclists and pedestrians, really doesn't tell us the whole story. So in the interest of time, I'm going to talk through some of these steps and probably skip a little bit, but I want to just kind of walk through the process we took as part of this predictive safety analysis. See you in the next slide. The first step was to compile the data. This was a really data-intensive effort, so we pulled together about 200 variables about the intersections and segments throughout Montgomery County. So looking at transportation, what's the speed limit, number of lanes, et cetera, what's the bicycle and pedestrian facilities, is there transit service, et cetera. We also looked at land use characteristics, so understanding, is this intersection near a school or an employment center, and things like that. And then we also pulled in demographics. So we've heard a bit about equity emphasis areas through the other presentations today. We looked at those as well as just additional variables related to race, income, language, people with disabilities, et cetera. And so you'll hear that equity is really a theme running through this presentation. The next step that we took in this process was that we estimated volume. So one key piece of data that we were missing when we did our data collection process was exposure. So how many people are walking, biking, or driving on our roadways on any given day? And so we know that exposure is a common variable in what predicts crashes. So a road that has no cars, not going to have any crashes, right? If there's no one walking, we're not going to see pedestrian crashes. And so what we did in this step is we compiled about 600 counts from development projects, our partners at DOT and SHA, and we developed models to estimate the number of daily people walking, biking, and driving throughout our roadway network. And I do want to note that, 600 counts. Prior to starting this project, we hired an independent consultant to say, is this enough? Is this enough data? Does it provide enough coverage of different types of roads throughout the county? And what that consultant found was that we did have, sufficient data in order to move forward. So we were able to develop these models. That's kind of an added benefit of this project, that we now have kind of more specific information about where people are walking, biking, and driving throughout Montgomery County. So once we had all of the data compiled, our third step was to really narrow in on what we were going to study as part of this project. So we didn't just want to say, where do crashes occur? Because if we define the problem really broadly, there's going to be way too many solutions. We're not really going to know what's the right solution in the right location. And so instead, we identified 6 crash types that kind of had a big enough sample for us to be able to study, but were specific enough that it could lead to some specific countermeasures or safety solutions. So you can go to the next slide. So the 6 crash types that we looked at were pedestrian crashes after dark at intersections, pedestrian crashes along segments with vehicles going straight, bicycle crashes at intersections, left turn crashes at intersections, and this included all modes. We looked at motor vehicle straight angle crashes, which is kind of that little diagram on the right when 2 vehicles hit at a right angle. And then we also looked at single vehicle crashes, which is often sometimes called run off the road. Or could you just go back for 1 sec? And so we selected these 6 crash types for a few additional reasons. One, we wanted to select crash types that were more associated with severe injuries and fatalities. So, you don't see rear ends on this list. Tons of rear ends happen in Montgomery County, but it's not super helpful from a Vision Zero perspective for us to study why and where rear ends occur. We also took equity in account, so we wanted to identify crash types that were particularly prevalent in our equity emphasis areas to make sure that that was, something that we were addressing throughout this project. So you go to the next slide. So with these 6 crash types, we have pretty good coverage of the severe injuries and fatalities that happen throughout Montgomery County. So just in these 6 crash types alone, we cover about 3/4 of the severe and fatal pedestrian crashes, 65% of severe and fatal bicycle crashes, and 40% for motor vehicle, getting us to about half of the severe injuries and fatalities in the county between 2015 and 2019. And you may be thinking that that number is a bit low, but this is actually pretty comparable to something like a high injury network or other safety analyses that kind of focus in on a few priority crash types or locations. So then we were ready to develop our safety performance functions, and that's just a technical term for our model or our equation that estimates the expected number of crashes. So this is just an illustrative example on the screen, but essentially what we did was a statistical analysis to identify which of those 200 variables are most related to the crash types that we selected. So here's an example. Oh, yes, go ahead to the next slide. So this is an example of the pedestrian crashes along segments. So as we expected, we saw that higher pedestrian traffic and higher motor vehicle traffic is associated with more crashes. I'm not going to talk about all of these, and I don't have slides for each of the crash types, but just kind of want to give you a sense of what we found, which is generally that areas that have more activity have more crashes. The places that we'd expect, high volume, high speed roads, tend to be associated with more crashes. We did also pretty consistently see equity challenges and see that places that tended to have higher incomes had lower crashes, or equity areas were often associated with crashes. One thing I just want to briefly note is that In some cases, we found that a traffic signal was associated with more crashes. But that's not saying that we shouldn't install a traffic signal. It's saying that the places we put traffic signals have a lot of activity. And similarly, we found that here with the number of crosswalks on the segment, there are more crashes, but we put the crosswalks in the places that we see people walking. And so we really use these equations or these models to point us to the locations that need improvement. And then you'll see later in the presentation that we rely on national research to identify the appropriate solutions for these crash types. So you know the next slide. Let's just skip ahead one, and you can stay here. So I mentioned at the beginning that we're going to kind of use that term crash risk. This is a mix of the predicted number of crashes as well as the observed. And so I'm going to talk about 3 metrics on the coming slides about how we use this data. So the first is total crash risk. So how many crashes happen in our downtown areas or how many crashes happen in equity areas. The next is a hotspot analysis. What are the worst locations in the county? And then the last is looking at annual crash risk. So any given intersection in a certain community, how many crashes are we expecting to see? There is a link on the bottom of the screen. I think in the interest of time, I'm not going to have us open the map, but it is in your packet if you want to look at a map that shows the top 200 locations for each of the 6 crash types. So you can go to the next slide. So first I'm going to talk a little bit about equity. We did a comparison of the equity emphasis areas versus non-equity emphasis areas. Given that most of the county isn't an equity area, is not in an equity area, we see that most of the crashes, happen in the more affluent parts of the county. So that's that first band under total crash risk. In the second band under hotspot analysis, we see that some of those hotspots, or at least a high number of those hotspots, really are in those equity emphasis areas. So for the pedestrian crashes after dark, you can see that the 108 is highlighted in blue, showing that more than half of the top 200 locations for equity area, pedestrian crashes after dark happen in the equity areas. And so this is really just confirming what we already know about the disparities in the county, and that we need to really kind of continue to take an equity lens when we're making safety improvements. If you could just advance one slide. So you can see now on the bottom we've added these percentages. This is showing that for average crash risk, it's really far and away much higher in the equity areas than it is in the rest of the county, over 200% higher for some of these pedestrian crash types. And so again, reinforcing that equity needs to continue to be a theme. You can go to the next slide. Let's actually just skip ahead 2 or 3. One more, keep going. Sorry. One more. Okay. One thing I also want to talk about is kind of how concentrated the crash risk is in Montgomery County. So if we were to just fix those worst 200 locations, would we really make a lot of progress, or is the crashes, more dispersed throughout the county? So if you could just click once. You can see that for 3 of the crash types, almost half of the crash risk, total crash risk in all of Montgomery County is really concentrated in those 200 locations. And so making improvements at those 200 locations can really go a long way towards Vision Zero when we look at these first 3 crash types. If you could click again. But with these other 3 crash types at the bottom, we see that these are a bit more dispersed. The peaks are less peaky, and that it's going to take improvements at more than those 200 locations to really make a lot of headway at improving safety and reaching our Vision Zero goals. So it's good that I have this slide, given that I didn't talk about all the intermediate slides, but I want to just acknowledge that we need to balance different location types through those different metrics of looking at where crash is happening overall, what are the worst locations, and where do we see high average crash risk. We really need to look beyond crash history in the past to be thinking more proactively. Equity needs to be a focus, and while much of the county is suburban, I didn't really show these slides, but we did see a need to continue to focus in our downtowns and town center areas, because given the high level of pedestrian and bicycle activity, we are seeing really high crash rates in those areas as well. So next slide. So while most of this presentation really focused on safety challenges, this last bit is going to focus on solutions. So we looked at about 15 different safety countermeasures as part of this project. For the most part, these are lower cost projects that can be implemented without a lot of engineering. I'll say that's not true of all of the ones on this list, but many of them are more systemic, low cost improvements. You can go to the next slide. And so what we did with these is we developed some dynamic tools that allow us to evaluate different investment scenarios. So through that, we can look at how many crashes could be reduced by implementing these countermeasures, what's the cost per crash reduced. So we worked with our partners at DOT to get cost estimates for each of these treatments, and so we can say kind of where's the best bang for our buck with different improvements. And lastly, we looked at the percent of locations in equity areas for different investment scenarios. And I think it's Appendix J of the report, you can see that we have top-ranked locations for each of these countermeasures, top 50 locations. And we also note whether or not that's on a state road or a county road or in an equity area. And so these are really candidates for potential improvement. So go to the next slide. I'm just going to walk through 2 quick examples of how this tool can be used and how you can think about this from a budgeting perspective. So this is an example of if we wanted to reduce those angle crashes that I talked about and say we have $350,000 in a level of effort or in a funding program. One option would be to increase the all red clearance time. This is the time that everyone at a signal has a red light. Given that that's a relatively inexpensive signal timing change, you could do that at over 100 locations for that $350,000. Another option could be to install all-way stop signs at an intersection that only has side street stop signs today. And again, relatively inexpensive, so we could do that at 70 locations with this amount of money. And then lastly, looking at a traffic signal, which is very expensive relative to these other treatments. And so you can see here that increasing all red clearance time really far and away has the greatest benefit. Given how many intersections can be touched with this low-cost treatment, we could decrease crashes over a 10-year period by almost 2,600 crashes, and the cost per each crash reduced is just $140. So you go to the next slide. This is in your packet as well. I know that it's very small on the screen, but we prepared this following a briefing with Councilmember Friedson to say, kind of a similar exercise. If you had $500,000, what can you get with that? And so we looked at 8 different treatments, and those are listed here to show you that if you did all of these $4 million, you could really make some progress towards Vision Zero. And these aren't, large capital projects. These are small things, again, like installing speed humps, high visibility crosswalks, these relatively low cost improvements that can be implemented with limited engineering and planning work. So if you could just go to the next slide. So as I wrap up, I just want to kind of say that the predictive safety analysis is really a first step. This is the foundation to future work that can be done and can really be used to inform data-driven decision-making at the planning department, at DOT, SHA, council, et cetera. So we see this as being used as part of, how CIP project funding is allocated, thinking about those different level of effort projects like sidewalks, how do we decide which are the sidewalks that we should really be improving in the short term? Where should we be building those crosswalks, et cetera? And then again, from the planning perspective, integrating this into master planning and regulatory review, as well as having a data and support for future grant applications. So I'm going to wrap up there, but I just want to thank you all for your time.
I want to thank you so much. I apologize. I'm going to exit for my 4 o'clock, but I don't want to cut this short at all. So thanks so much for all this. I really look forward to delving into it and following up with all of you. So stay and ask your questions, please.
Maybe just go back one.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that presentation. We all recognize that these issues are emotional because so many of us have been touched by the injury or death of a friend, of a family member, of a constituent, and the immediate reaction is to fix that particular intersection, stretch of road, or whatever type of failing infrastructure it was that helped facilitate the tragedy. And what this presentation has illuminated is a fact-based way of moving forward, one in which we can do the greatest good for the greatest number. And I think in a time of finite resources, or not unlimited resources is a better way of putting it, we sometimes have to make those decisions based on data, and appreciate the presentation. I just have three notes that I wrote while the presentation was taking place regarding the analysis of where incidents occur. I thought that it was interesting that marked crosswalks are a place where more incidents occur. We can get into that in a little bit, but you clearly were leading the conversation there with regard to the red lights and making those times longer. Clearly, there's a relationship there. But I thought also interestingly was that there were lower crashes in higher income areas. And again, talking about looking at this through an equity lens, making sure that people who might be more reliant on walking, whether it is to public transportation, to the store, just around their neighborhood, make sure that they have the support to feel safe in their community as well. The second point, and I just alluded to it, was there any analysis or any through line that you gleaned with particularly the urban areas, but more specifically turning right on red? Is that something that could be, that needs to be looked at, which while you were talking about both the $200,000, was it $200,000 or $250,000 and $500,000 approximately, both of them had extension of the red lights as the greatest safety measure. But what about actually just possibly banning turning on red lights, specifically in our urban corridors? Any thoughts on that?
My understanding is that that's been done in several urban areas around the country as part of Vision Zero strategies, and that there is research showing that that does decrease conflicts and crashes with pedestrians and bicyclists.
Good. And I know that SHA is no longer, SHA is here, and there is an intersection between that and SHA, and we can continue that conversation another time, but I'm glad additional research has shown that to be an effective strategy. And then the last takeaway was that 55% of incidents occur in the 200 intersections. How would you, is there a through line between those types of intersections? Are they again in our urban or dense suburban corridors? Or anything to extrapolate on that a little bit more?
I think you're referring to what was on one of my later slides, and what we found was that 55% of fatalities in recent years occurred in what we identified as the top 200 locations.
So they were fatalities specifically, okay.
Yeah. Again, overall, we found that it tended to be high volume, high speed roads that were more likely to have those crashes. Mm-hmm. You did make a comment that I didn't respond to, so I just want to comment briefly on, you mentioned the marked crosswalks being associated with more crashes, and high income areas being associated with fewer crashes. I guess I'll tackle the income one first. I think that may be capturing something about land use and the transportation environment that we didn't capture. So maybe the lot sizes are bigger, there's fewer cars on the road. And while those are some of the variables that we looked at, some of the most affluent parts of the county are more rural in nature, or are more suburban and rural in nature. And so that is part of what we found on the whole, that higher income areas did have fewer crashes. And then to the marked crosswalks point, again, we did find that several of our variables were related to activity. And so we put our crosswalks where a lot of people are walking. That also is places that we've had pedestrian crashes in the past. And so I think in some ways that's saying that a marked crosswalk's not going to be enough at that location. We need to be thinking about where are we doing more to protect the crossing, so that pedestrians that are crossing 4 or 6 lanes, can do so safely.
I appreciate you elaborating on that. And as we use this information and this tool moving forward towards next budget, next CIP, I think we need to keep this at the fore and continuing building it into our models, whether it is park and planning itself or DOT or just having it part of this committee conversation. Because again, the data is guiding us as to how to solve this problem. Otherwise, we are throwing resources across the board and making smaller impact, right? Did I hear somebody want to make a comment?
Just a couple comments. I think the work that you have before you is something that we've been advocating to be done for a long time, and I think there's a lot of value into what we see here. As other members of the committee have said, there's nothing worse than us chasing bad events around, trying to identify the issue at that particular bad event that may not prevent some other bad event. The Vision Zero program has been geared around time series data of where collisions have happened over time, which is the same data that's fed into this. So we know in those hotspot areas that we're already working on, this work is really confirmatory that those locations are places that need the remediatory work, which I think is helpful. And otherwise, I think this tool is very helpful when we are looking to either do work or another party is doing work in an area, whether it's the state or a developer or whomever may be implementing projects, to identify what situations we already expect may be happening around there and to address those as that work is going forward. That's really good stuff. I think this needs to be maintained and enhanced. The data inputs are relatively thin compared to the size of the county, and I think the results would be improved as more data is fed into this model so that the relationship between the experience in the past and what's predicted in the future is strengthened. And then the other thing is I think this tool does a good job at identifying places where the risk is high, but as we get more data fed into this, getting a little bit more refinement on where the severe crashes can be modeled going forward, not just all crashes, because there is a little danger of chasing all crashes because not all crashes have serious consequences. And where we are in implementing this program, we really need to focus on the crashes that have serious consequences or likely to. So a little bit more refinement from our perspective in that area to get hone in the locations. 200 is still a lot of locations. You know, we have like 800 or so signals in the county now, so it's a quarter of those locations, although these aren't all signalized locations. Would be helpful to actually make this tool a little bit more useful. But I'm excited to see progress in this methodological direction towards identifying where to focus our work.
If I could just offer one little piece of clarification. This tool provides us information on every single intersection and every single street segment in the county, and it incorporated data from all of those as well. I think what Director Conklin is referring to is in estimating the exposure, which was just a handful of the variables, of the 200 or so variables that Ms. McGowan talked about. We didn't have exposure. We didn't have volumes for pedestrians and bicyclists and vehicles at every single intersection, every single street segment. So that's where we needed to. We only had the 600 counts. We had to do and come up with a model, excuse me, to estimate those at all of the other intersections. But all of the other variables are variables that we had at every intersection, and we have, you know, a value for every single one of these crash types for each of those intersections, and we've just identified where the top 200 were for each of the different crashes.
Well, it sounds like there's agreement in the value and the need to continue putting more information into it. The unfortunate reality there is that more information being put into it means more failure because more incidents are occurring, right? That's the reality of it.
But it doesn't have to just be the incident data, as
Sure.
Mr. Sartori mentioned. It can be just the whatever data is collected over the time.
I get that. I get that. It's an unfortunate reality, right, of the nature of this model. The more information that's going in means more work needs to be done. Understood. But what I'm hearing here is the coordination, and I'll infer a pledge or a willingness to use this moving forward within whether it is budgetary decisions or other policy decisions. Is that what I'm hearing, Director Conklin?
Well, I don't think we're replacing the work that we currently have underway in the places where we have identified need this work with what's being done here. But as new projects begin or as we're doing work in new areas, this is certainly a tool that we can use in the scoping process and helping getting started on new work that's going to get undertaken.
Okay, understood. Last thing I would want is for this tool to go underutilized or to be stovepiped within the commission itself.
Yeah, just one quick point. Traditionally, a lot of communities have, for example, been using high injury networks. That's based on a reactive look, and we're still using that, and there's some value in continuing to look at where crashes have occurred in the past. But, you know, communities that are really advancing in Vision Zero are starting to transition from the high injury network approach gradually to the more predictive approach. And I think Jesse's going to touch on that a bit.
I guess I was just going to add that I think the real value of this project is identifying the places that don't have a history of severe injuries and fatalities, but look like the places that do, right? Just because this intersection or segment doesn't have, isn't on the high injury network because it doesn't have a history of a severe injury or fatality, doesn't mean that we shouldn't allocate resources to fix it. And so I think that's really the greatest benefit of this work, where we've identified high risk but low observed crashes in the past, because that's where we can really prevent something from occurring.
Focusing on the word predictive. Right. Okay. Councilmember Friesen.
Well, thank you. I think you hit on a lot of the questions that I had. I still think we need to work through how do we intend to use this? And I think there's time for us to work that out, but we need to be moving forward. And I do think we need to identify, as was talked about before, the inputs. And, I will note every crash is a failure. But the question is whose failure? And a crash that doesn't result in a fatality is probably, most instances, a user failure. Once it becomes a fatality, it's our failure because we created the likelihood of a fatality to happen at a rate of speed or in a manner in which it was likely to lead to a fatality. And that's the difference. We're not going to prevent all user errors from happening. That will never happen, and that has never been our policy goal. Our policy goal is to make sure when there is a user error, when there is a collision, when there is a crash, that it doesn't end up in a fatality. That's the difference of the situation that I mentioned. It's such a mundane example, which is why I use it. Literally, we're having a walk. There was a slight variation of the sidewalk. The person who was walking with a group of people was talking, not looking in front of her for every single step that she was taking, which is not reasonable to expect somebody to be doing. She tripped. Instead of tripping in the road, she tripped in a small buffer of grass, which of course prevented her from being in a roadway where cars were going 40 to a lot more than 40 miles per hour. Someone who gets hit in the middle of a roadway on their knees or stomach or back that conflicts with a car going 40 or more miles per hour is more likely than not going to die. That's the point. That's why we're here. And so the challenge that we have is how do we make sure that we aren't waiting for the one fatality to happen, because if there is something that has been identified to have a high risk of resulting in a fatality, our goal should be to prevent the fatality. And so that's what I think we got to hone in on and what we have to figure out. And I think the real benefit to this, to me, is not just in the big CIP conversation that we have. That's important. I think we should include this as part of it. The department has already done amazing work and needs to continue to do that work and build on the work that it has done to have Vision Zero be part of the way in which we think about our capital budget and the way that we invest major infrastructure changes. And I think credit is deserved there. Where I think the real secret sauce to what we have before us here is to see what we are able to implement in a very cost-effective way that will significantly reduce risk for serious injury and death. And so, that's why I asked for the $500,000 model. We now have a chart. And $500,000 is very little money in the scheme of our level of effort funding. And we should look at it and determine, is this worth it? Is it worth the supplemental appropriation? Is it worth moving funds around within our existing program? Not to take away from an existing long-planned project, but some of the level of effort projects that we're doing that are, in the couple $100,000 or less range, is this a better bang for the buck right now to prevent an injury, to prevent a death? And I think that's what we ought to be thinking about. So I put that out to say, how are, if there was additional funding for Vision Zero related projects, how quickly could it be implemented? So you saw in the chart some of the examples that were given here. Of course, some take longer than others to implement, but how quickly could funding be deployed in order to make some of the lower cost changes that were suggested at a high number of intersections, for instance, that were suggested?
I think those scenarios are informative and illustrative, but the specifics of what's recommended where and the site-specific conditions there need validation before you can implement them. But those are scenarios that are worth exploring.
But isn't there one of the challenges we keep talking about, we can't solve this problem intersection by intersection. And of course, we need to make intersection by intersection changes because that's how the stuff was built, and it's how it's going to have to be rebuilt. And we all recognize that. Mm-hmm. But I think we have to layer on top of that something that is more macro, that does more with finite resources in a smaller period of time. I mean, even this was a 10-year period. That's too long, frankly. We don't have 10 years to wait as intersections continue to be dangerous and run high levels of risk for severe crashes and potentially deaths. Like, we don't have a decade. So the question is, can't we do both? I mean, this is the challenge that I don't really understand, and I recognize that you have forgotten sitting at this table, Director Conklin, more than I've ever known about transportation engineering, and I'm not suggesting that I know otherwise. But it would seem to me that with a relatively modest amount of funding in the scheme of the transportation budget, in the scheme of the county's budget, given the magnitude of the issues that we face, is there a harm in continuing what we're doing and then, in the larger projects that we have, but focusing $350,000, $500,000, $700,000, a manageable number towards what seems like, to me at least, relatively low-hanging fruit to say we're going to go after 108 intersections that are overwhelmingly in equity emphasis areas that we have identified run a high risk of collisions. And so for a relatively small amount of money, we're going to make a big impact. We're going to do it with an equity lens, and we're going to do it in a predictive, data-focused way that actually may prevent tragedies from happening.
No, I don't, and I actually don't think it's different than a lot of the work that's being done. I think what you could define a specific program to do something like that. The only point I'm making is when you get there to do the work, you may find the situation is different than what the predictive model said it would be. So you're not going to see exactly the same outcome and exactly the same set of interventions needed at all those locations based on what the model is showing you. It doesn't mean exploring that method of implementation is a bad idea at all, and that could be done. You could identify a pilot geometry or subset of locations that this model suggests have a certain set of characteristics and go and validate those characteristics and implement the measures suggested there. That would be a viable thing to do, and I don't think that takes away from any of the other program that's underway or any of the other projects that's underway. So there's not really an argument that, looking at areas that have certain characteristics and saying they might be suitable for a certain common set of countermeasures is unreasonable. That's a reasonable thing to do, absolutely. So I'm not arguing with that approach.
Okay, well, I think it's worth exploring. I will continue to be exploring this to let everybody know. But to me, we have to continue doing what we're doing, but we have to be doing a lot more because we're never going to catch the tail here. And the tail is stopping people from dying on our roadways. And that is the whole purpose of the conversation. I know we're all committed to doing that. And I think it's going to take a lot more resources, and I think it's going to take a greater level of focus for us to actually get there. So I appreciate it. I'm glad to know that we could do this. The question is how and when and if we will do it, and ultimately look forward to talking with you, Council Vice President Glass, and other colleagues, because I do think we need to move forward, and we need to move forward with more. But thank you for all the work that has gone into this particular model and you presenting it. Thank you for all the department's work, the coordination with MCDOT. We need more collaboration, more coordination, and hopefully we can actually put this model to use to keep people safe on our roads.
Thank you, Councilmember Friedson. We'll have more conversation, and for those of you who are following this conversation on streaming services or on closed caption, closed circuit television, we are going to have this conversation, a full council briefing tomorrow morning. I expect a lot of the same conversation to be had, but it is so important the full council wanted to have this conversation. So to be continued for sure. Thank you, everybody.
close the right lane and the right turn mercy